Excellent. Welcome everyone to the October 14th open session for North Clackamas School Board. Glad that everyone is here. Glad that everyone is able to be here. We look forward to this meeting and the information that's coming forth. As usual, when we are in person, we do a flag salute, but because we are virtual, we will not. Today we'll begin with our native land acknowledgement. Director Bauer.
Thank you, Chair Ford. We acknowledge the land on which we sit and which we call the North Clackamas School District. It rests on the traditional and indigenous lands and village sites of the Native peoples of the Kalapuya, Chinook, Molalla, and Clackamas. We take this opportunity to offer gratitude for the ability to learn, work, and be a community on this land. And we offer thanks to the original caretakers of this region. We recognize the historic policies of colonization, genocide, relocation, and assimilation that affected Indigenous and Native families, both past and present, and that will affect those in the future, and honor the resilience and revitalization of our Indigenous and Native communities. We pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, who have been the stewards of this land throughout the generations.
Thank you. We'll begin by opening the floor for the minutes from September 23rd, 2021. Open floor for the motion.
McVeigh, move approval of the September 23rd, 2021 minutes.
Excellent. Second.
Bowers, second.
I think I heard Schrader first, so Director McVeigh was the motion and Director Schrader was the second. Any discussion needed on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll do all opposed of approving the minutes from September 23rd. Please vocalize yourself. Hearing none, minutes from September 23rd, 2021 have been approved. Next, we have consent agenda. We have one item. Open the floor for motion.
Ms. Bauer, I move approval of the consent agenda, which includes the employment changes.
Director Perez, second.
It's been properly moved in second. All those opposed of us approving the consent agenda, please say aye. Hearing none, consent agenda with employment changes has been approved. Excellent. Moving right along, we are at our community comments. I will read our policy, our public comment policy. Any individuals desiring to speak may indicate their desire by submitting their name, city of residence, either email address or phone number, and the group, if any, that is represented on the sign-in sheet or online form prior to the meeting, prior to the board meeting. A speaker should give their name, city of residence, and the group, if any, that is represented, and will limit their presentation to 3 minutes. If there are more patrons desiring to present comments than time allotted, the board chair has the authority to reduce the presentation time for individual speakers or institution or institute a prioritization process with attention to order of sign up and city of residence. Speakers may offer objective criticisms of the district operations, programs that are of concern to them. The board is restricted from hearing and will not consider complaints regarding any individual district staff member or any person connected to with the district. As an organization centered around youth and their positive development, all speakers will model respectful public comment and be mindful of civil discourse. The board vests in its chair or other presiding officer authority to terminate the remarks of any individual when those remarks do not adhere to the rules established. So we do have a couple speakers. Just so you know, I believe our first speaker is here. When you have 30 seconds left, I will post this card as close as I can so you can see it, that you have 30 seconds. I will give you enough time to hopefully finish your thought. If you do not comply within the 3 minutes, I will cut your mic off and you will be exited from the meeting. All right, who do we have first? Miss Cindy? Or is it? who's-
Cindy's not here. This is
Okay.
Sandra, and our
Okay.
first speaker is Tristan Sakamoto.
Welcome, Tristan.
Thank you, Libra. My name is Tristan. My daughter no longer attends school in North Clackamas, but I need to make parents aware of what is happening to their children at school. As the first week of September grew near, my daughter was eager to receive her school schedule and compare it to that of her peers. The Friday before Labor Day weekend, I reached out to the office of Rock Creek Middle School to inquire about the status of students' schedules, and I was told the schedules had not been finalized. The Friday prior to a holiday weekend, with school starting in 4 short days and the students' schedules hadn't been finalized, I asked to speak with the principal and the phone call mysteriously disconnected. I called back and was told that I could be transferred to his voicemail, but they could not give me his number, nor was he available to take phone calls. The lies and evasiveness of school staff was irritating and worrisome. I called the district office and was told the reason students did not receive schedules prior to the first day of school is because school staff did not want to deal with students calling and asking to change their schedules. The truth comes out. My tax dollars are being wasted on public school officials that are the least bit interested in putting my child's needs ahead of their own. Little did I know this issue would be the least of my worries in the weeks to come. My daughter started her 8th grade school year with a face mask, hand sanitizer on upon entering campus, limited trips to the bathroom, and the inability to drink from a water fountain. Does this school board realize the adverse reaction the constant covering of faces has on a child? Do you realize it takes away their identity? Do you realize the negative effect of not being able to see a smiling face all day has on a young child? I believe that I do not want to believe that you're just ignorant to these studies based on the topic. But then you asked my 13-year-old daughter about her gender identity, and it became very clear that you are fully aware of the mind games that you are playing on our children. After weeks of requesting the document and failed several attempts, I finally received it. Questions include, but were not limited to, what are your pronouns? Many pronouns were listed to choose from. May I share these pronouns with your parents? Would you like to speak in private about this? I have so many questions about the questions that were presented to my daughter in a place where I sent her to learn about reading, writing, and arithmetic, not where I expect her to be asked difficult questions in a classroom full of peers where she has been taught to follow a teacher's guidance, a place where she can't lean on me if she has questions or is nervous about what is being requested of her. She doesn't have her phone in class with her, so she has no way of escaping this difficult situation. She has told me of students being reprimanded for requesting to use the bathroom during class, so she certainly doesn't want to disappoint a teacher by asking this after being assigned a task. How dare school staff take advantage of vulnerable teenagers about such a sensitive topic? These children haven't seen the inside of a classroom or been in large groups for nearly 18 months. And these teachers take advantage of their vulnerability. Rock Creek Middle School had no right to present these questions to my daughter. No staff member at that school is in any professional capacity to talk privately to young, impressionable children, and I am appalled that this forum would indicate otherwise. Rock Creek does not act as a gatekeeper between parents and their children. Can you please explain to me how the sex of a child impacts teachings in a public school setting?
Thank you, Tristan.
Well said.
I think Julie is next. I'm going to admit her.
Hi, Julie. How are you? I believe you heard the protocols for public comments. I will show this card at 30 seconds. You can begin when you are ready.
Are you there, Julie?
Yeah, sorry. I just got let in and I did not know if it was me or not.
Nope, no problem.
You're up.
I did not want to be rude, so thank you.
You're up. Hi, Julie. Welcome.
Hello. I'm here tonight to talk about school quarantines. So first, I understand NCSD does not set school quarantines. So I want you all to know, it took a lot of digging. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Dr. James, for and anybody else who helped me understand that. So OHA, I understand, has set forth the school quarantine protocol.
I asked and they have not ID'd themselves.
But I think that we can all agree that quarantining students is highly disruptive to their learning and really their lives in general. For 10, 14, sometimes 24 days, students have no access to live learning. Some of these students being quarantined are homeless or in homes where they are abused, in homes with no food or no electricity. During their quarantine, these students also have no access to the free breakfast or lunch that some students really do need.
Not true.
Is that not true? Did someone just say that?
I'm not sure who that was, but go ahead and continue.
Okay, if that's not true, that's great. I had heard that they weren't even allowed to go into the school. So if you're finding a way to get them food, thank you for that. There are two questions that really stick out to me about quarantining students. First, is this policy effective and necessary? Currently, there's no data collected or at least being shared in Oregon that can provide the answer to this question. We have no idea how many quarantine students actually do end up contracting COVID. Making students live under such a repressive mandate with no data to show it is necessary is negligent. LA County schools did collect this data, and once they saw that only 0.2% of quarantine students were contracting COVID, they modified student quarantines. Modified quarantines has not caused any community case counts to increase in LA County. Locking students out of school should be the very last tool we use to keep kids in our community safe. The second question, is there another way that we can keep exposed students in school while also keeping our community safe? Many parts of the country are using a test to stay option to either shorten quarantines or have kids avoid quarantines altogether. This is where the board and the leadership with NCSD comes in. Students and families need you to address this with OHA. They need you to press them and the county on these two questions. Do we have data showing quarantines are effective at keeping COVID out of schools? Are there other tools that we can use instead of locking kids out of schools? Students and families need you to advocate for them. Again, I understand you don't create the quarantine policy. However, you were elected to help facilitate and provide the students of North Clackamas with a robust education. When a policy is put in front of you that will disrupt students' learning and possibly put many students in dangerous and unhealthy situations, it's your responsibility to push back on that. We need you to engage with OHA on behalf of the students that you serve. Email them, call them, use any connections that you have to ask them these questions. Work to find a solution that keeps students in school. This is not March of 2020. We now have knowledge, data, tools, and resources to be able to keep students in school and to keep our community safe. Locking healthy kids out of school should not happen anymore. Please do the heavy lifting and do what you can to partner with us to keep students in school. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Our next speaker is Karen.
I just let her in. It might take a second.
Okay. Hi, Karen. She's still connecting. Karen, you're in. We can see you, but we cannot hear you. Karen, we cannot hear you. Karen, can you hear? We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. We can't hear you. I'm not waving at you. I'm trying to get your attention to let you know that we cannot hear you. It looks like you're.
There we go.
There we go.
Can you hear me
Okay.
now?
We can hear you now. Welcome, Karen.
Okay.
When you get to 30 seconds, I'll give you this card. And if you are over 3 minutes, I will mute you and move on to the next speaker. So welcome.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
go for it.
So my name is Karen Cook, and I do not have children in the school district right now because my youngest graduated in 2015, but I'm still here representing and hopefully the children and the other mothers and fathers who have had to deal with a really tumultuous last 2 years. I'm here to share a little bit about the mask mandate and some facts I've pulled up. In section 1H of ORS 339288 of the Oregon Public Law and Statutes, it states that the use of the following types of restraint on a student Any public education program is prohibited. And I quote, any restraint that impedes or creates a risk of impeding breathing is not lawful. That's our Oregon law. Secondly, the World Health Organization acknowledges that they lack evidence that wearing a mask even protects healthy persons from SARS-CoV-2. Also, on the actual box of common use masks, it states that masks do not protect from the COVID virus. So why are we wearing them? More evidence suggests that masking does more harm than good. Consider the research of Mr. Rigelston, a teacher and PhD candidate at the Columbia University, who wrote, masks and social distancing induce trauma, and trauma at any age is developmentally dangerous, especially for children who are experiencing trauma in other parts of their lives. Stress and fear in response to actual or possible threat enhances the possibility of forming trauma-related memories. Every year of a child's early life lays the foundation for their adulthood, and insecure foundations do in fact crumble. What are we doing to our children? They are the future. According to the Belgium Academy for Medicine, testing children, imposing mouth masks, and quarantine go against the principle of first do no harm, which is included in the Hippocratic oath that doctors dress. Okay. According to the statistics of the American Academy of Pediatrics, which reports the mortality rate for children diagnosed with COVID-19 to be 0.003%. So we must ask ourselves, do the benefits of masks and social distancing truly outweigh the long-term psychological, physical, social, and academic harm we are inflicting on a whole generation of American school children? Thank you so much for hearing me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, we have Eric. Same thing. You have 3 minutes. When you get to 30 seconds, I will show you the card.
Hey, y'all, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you. When you get to 30 seconds, Eric, welcome. I will show you the card so you know that you have 30 seconds left.
Sounds good. Thank you. I'm here today as an advocate for my children, other families in the community, and presumably an ally to all of you on the board. I assume that you guys and I all want the same thing. We want them to be healthier, happier, more educated, better prepared for the world, and safer than if they hadn't been a part of the school system. And I promise I'm not an armchair quarterback. I have 2 kids in the system. I volunteered countless of hours over the last 12 years. So let's look at a couple of trends and outcomes. This is an important task because it brings humility to the process. We have to see things exactly as they are, or things seductively sound good and in theory fall apart when they're faced with the realities of the world. We have to make adjustments. So let's look at 3 major metrics together. And I provided sources, all this in my notes to the school board. First one, health awareness. We're failing. For example, our kids are consistently becoming more obese. The trends show that our kids are not healthier. There's a discussion about a possible upcoming vaccine mandate under the guise to keep our kids safe and healthy, but in the same breath, feed them cheese pizza, cheeseburgers, fried foods, chips, and sugar. You simply lost their credibility to say that you want kids safe and healthy, not proven by my opinion, but by results. And frankly, we rank toward the bottom of the country in an effort to produce healthier kids. Number 2, mental health. We're failing. Our kids rank near the bottom of the country for happiness levels as defined by such things as depression ratings, sports participation, and overall safety. Number 3, basic education, failing. Oregon ranks near the very bottom of the country in public education, and ranking in those districts do rank in the top 30% in the state, but the trends show that math and reading proficiency are on a steady decline. And this isn't a personal attack on any of you, but if we don't like where we are, we have to think differently. The system lacks humility and self-awareness, and we can't ignore the results. Let's talk about diversity, because that's what a lot of the system is talking about. It's just a noble cause, you guys. But the public school system is on a quest for people to be valued by what they look like, but teach them all to think the same. And that's not diversity, that's conformity. That's right. Topics shouldn't be introduced predicated by your version of right or wrong. That should be up to the families to decide. In a recent slide, one of my my junior in high school, my daughter's class said this, and I quote, "There's no debate today. We are talking about equity, and that's one-sided. Any other opinion is rooted in racism and chauvinism." That's not a statement of education. That's a statement of indoctrination. And then they want us to share stats about the racist workplace in America. And I agree, you guys, there are problems. But if you want to use the same lens that they use to make the conclusions about America, and we want to use it on a public school system, public elementary school then are one of the most racist, most sexist, least tolerant institutions in the country because they're comprised of primarily one color, one sex, and one political affiliation, claiming to be the champion of fighting some devil that most of the teachers never fought themselves. So please stay in your lane. Please have some self-awareness. I want to say this in no uncertain terms. I don't co-parent with the school board. We co-educate. You don't exist to dictate what goes in their bodies, on their bodies, or preach one version of moral righteousness. You do not exist to mold young minds. You are elected to help educate the basics and spark individual creative thought. Let us do the rest. The parents are in charge and we hold the power, not you. They are our kids, not yours. Your agenda is factually contributing to produce a generation of kids that are more depressed, more suicidal, less prepared for the world, and less confident about their futures than ever before. It's not my opinion, it's facts, and our kids deserve better.
Thank you to all of our speakers. Having parents show up and speak to us is really an important part of our process, in particular community comments, and it can come in several forms. So we appreciate the vocal form, but if that's not your forte, which is not for everyone, we still read emails and we read them often. And I just want to go through a list of what we've received since our last meeting. We received an email from a soccer coach having a very specific request. We received information from a parent wanting September 1st kindergarten cutoff to be reevaluated. We received another parent having concerns about our online program. We received an email from a parent with concerns about the Happy Valley Middle School curriculum appropriateness. We received an email from a parent this was from a student, I'm sorry. We received an email from a student requesting help from the board to get a parking pass. We received a parent email to opt into the free weekly testing for COVID. We got a couple emails about quarantining rules and requests to reevaluate. We also received an email of concerns about our social justice being more important than our children. So we appreciate all feedback, all information that you guys send to us. We read it all and we do take it into consideration. So thank you for your time and energy this evening. We appreciate you. Moving on to our next agenda item, and that is our superintendent's report. Dr. James, are you ready for us?
Sure am. We will get the PowerPoint up here on the screen.
And Sandra, I need you to please give me the sharing rights again.
Great, here we go. Thank you. So good evening. I'm going to update you tonight on the happenings within our district, and we have some exciting information and some additional business to share tonight. I want to start off by congratulating our very own Ethelyn Tumalad, who was recently named and celebrated as Oregon's 2022 Teacher of the Year. Ethelyn prides herself as a role model for students, and as a self-identified Filipino woman and immigrant, she sees her role in supporting students and finding their voice, recognizing their beauty of their diversity, and being unapologetically themselves. Our state superintendent, Colt Gill, shared that Ethelyn infuses her classroom with community, belonging, and empathy. And a former student described Ms. Tumalad as hands down one of the best and most thoughtful teachers that they have ever had. Others shared that Ms. Tumalad sees and treats every student that walks into her classroom like family and looks for ways to change their lives for the better. She is the reason many kids come to school, and she teaches students how to be themselves in a world, that consistently tells them to be something that they are not. In Ethelyn's words, she goes on to say, while I am an educator in the classroom and my content area is ELA and AVID, my identity as an API educator and educator of color grounds me in my work. I've seen the importance of having positive role models of color. Therefore, it is important that students see themselves, in their advisors, and that their advisors work together to build bridges amongst each other with our marginalized identities. And as an educator who always wants to ensure that students become change agents in the classroom, she leads her students with empathy and truly believes that modeling is the best form of education. So as the 2022 Oregon Teacher of the Year, Ethlyn will serve as a spokesperson and a representative for all Oregon teachers, and she will also receive year-long professional development and networking with other state teachers of the year through the National Teacher of the Year program. And we would just like to congratulate Ethlyn Tumalad, Clackamas High School, and the North Clackamas School District. We're super proud of what this brings for our community. So very excited. Congratulations, Ethlyn. Speaking of dynamic teachers, yesterday we had an exciting and robust day of professional development and learning for our K-5 staff. We had a pretty incredible college and career workshop for our secondary students. These were led in collaboration with our teaching and learning department, our instructional specialists, and elementary and secondary programs. Students participated in PSAT exams, college essay writing, FAFSA presentations, and our middle school students had the opportunity to go to Sabin-Schellenberg, our technical center, and understand what that means and so much more. As we popped in through the day, our students were asking engaging questions. They were pretty dynamic to watch the students participate in this, and it was a pretty phenomenal day. So very exciting times yesterday. Many of you recognize this. In 2016, North Clackamas voters approved a capital improvement bond for upgrades and maintenance to facilities across the district. One of the largest funded projects was to upgrade Milwaukee High School, in which we celebrated with a ribbon cutting ceremony that took place on Friday, October 8th. It was an exciting night being there with students, staff, board directors, community, and alumni. And we were able to enjoy student and alumni performances and speeches that reminded us of truly what it means to be a Milwaukee High School Mustang. The event ended with a tour of the new school and the amazing building that really brought a lot of smiles to people's faces and led to wonderful attendance at the homecoming football game. And so for those of you that might have missed this event, we do have it posted on our district Facebook page, and you can go and watch the program in its entirety there. So, and I just want to say this picture was taken prior to COVID, so we don't see masks there, but keeping the congratulations going, just want to say a special kudos to our very own Clackamas Web Academy. They ranked number 5 in a national review of the top 10 online charter schools for 2021 by vastleader.com. And Clackamas Web Academy is a pioneering option for online learning in our school district, providing K-12 and early college curriculum to more than 480 North Clackamas School District students. They have a unique combination of online classes, in-person labs, activities, and access to college level courses, which allows the students and staff to create a more diverse environment for online engagement and success, and it shows. So another thing that we're very proud of and that we want to join with CWA in recognizing them for their hard work and dedication and accomplishments. Which leads us to share that our Human Resources Department has been working very hard to support our staff through the COVID-19 vaccinations, religious and medical exception requirements that are due on October 18th statewide by all school districts. We are grateful that in our school district right now, we have 5 employees out of over 2,000 that are currently in non-compliance with the mandate. We'll continue to work through those challenges with impacted staff to the degree possible. We also continue to face substantial employee substitute shortages within both certified and classified staff. And this has brought many challenges, but I just want to say thank you to our staff. They're working so hard to overcome the obstacles related to the shortages that we're dealing with on a daily basis and really trying to be innovative and creative and getting some new opportunities up and running for our schools. We continue to work on keeping our students as safe as possible by reviewing and rewriting our guidance around staff home visits and high school overnight travel, in addition to an ongoing review of updated guidance from the Oregon Department of Education and our local health authorities. So currently, this guidance has asked us to limit extracurricular activities to the greatest extent possible, hold family events online and outdoors to the greatest extent possible. And they've asked us to do this through the end of October, in which they will review this information again and give us new and updated guidance. And I just want to, share that also we have heard from many of our families the desire for an optional weekly student COVID-19 test that's administered at their homes through the Oregon Health Science University. Just want to let our families know we have signed up to participate in this option, and we are now awaiting follow-up from OHSU. As we're waiting for that follow-up from OHSU, we are monitoring the rollout in 2 neighboring school districts that are in the process of doing this, and we're learning from them in terms of what's working and what's not. And we also have put together a committee that is developing an implementation timeline here at North Clackamas so that when we are able to offer this option, we can hit the ground running with this. So more information to come on this soon, but we are taking a look to see what we can do. And so we've tried to give you guys an update, around our COVID data. As you are aware, we are now displaying our COVID-19 data on our district website weekly. We have had requests to have this information listed by schools, and we're reviewing some of the concerns that we might have and working to see if we can make this happen. So it is something that's in the works and in our conversation. Like we are seeing across the state, our COVID quarantine and isolation numbers right now are remaining steady or starting to take a very, very slow dip downward. So we're not seeing the upward spikes, but we're continuing to hold there. And while our COVID-19 numbers remain steady, our family contacts continue to rise for our staff. And so in part, this is due to a change in our local health authorities' guidance on what types of tests qualify regarding quarantine and isolation numbers. So this is requiring more conversations with families to understand details that we did not have to discuss with folks prior, which means an increase in capacity needs for our employees who are involved in this contact tracing. So while numbers are holding steady and maybe starting to go down, the amount of contacts that we are having with families is going up. And so that's an important data point to note there. And this came up in our comments today. We want to make sure that our families know that we're continuing to provide support services from our Wichita Center and our schools. So families who are in our virtual online program or are quarantined or in isolation may pick up meals for the week. The pickup is on Wednesdays and at 2 locations, and we will get that information out again on our social media and website. It is out there, but we'll make sure it's front and center. And in addition to that, we have opened 2 new school-based health centers this fall to serve as hubs to support our students and families. And they do offer services around COVID-19 for those who need it. So this means that all 4 of our comprehensive high schools now have health centers available for students and families. And that's another important option and another important thing for families to know that they can rely on in terms of getting support when needed. And I'll share every year we bring forward to the board a report on our standing with Division 22. Division 22 are the OARs that govern standard practices in public schools, and districts are required to publicly report on their compliance with the standards each year. North Clackamas School District has reviewed the requirements for the compliance for the 2020-21 school year, and I am reporting that North Clackamas School District is in compliance with all required standards for the 2021 school year. So our next steps are we will communicate our compliance with the Oregon Department of Education and post a statement on our district website by the November deadline. And finally, I just want to continue to say thank you to staff who are working hard and working together to make really tough work right now a little lighter. We have amazing students, amazing staff, and we are so grateful for our community. And just want to say thank you to all that are just in it together doing the work. So at this time, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. James, for that information. I appreciate that. Director McVeigh, any questions or comments?
Nope.
Excellent. Director Bauer?
So just thank you for the report. Amazing job that you have kept staff on, and it's great to hear the awards for some of our staff too, and the recognition. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Director Bauer. Director Schrader?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Way?
No questions, but thank you again, Dr. James, for the report. I thought it was very comprehensive and great to know just what our continued policies and procedures and practices are, especially around minimizing COVID in our school district. So thank you.
Thanks.
Director Perez?
Thank you, Board Chair. No questions for Dr. James. Just want to say thank you, Dr. James, to you and all your staff for all you do day in and day out for all the children and families in our district. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. The only question I had was about, you mentioned about the testing and the fact that we put in the application and that we're waiting. Any chance that they gave you a timeline, or is this a kind of a rolling wait?
I believe it is a rolling wait and last conversation, but I'm going to invite our Chief of Staff, Tiffany Shireman, to double check me on that and make sure there's no new information.
That is accurate, Dr. James and Chair Ford.
Cool. And then I just want to say congratulations, Ethelyn. Super proud of you. That's a great honor and well done, well deserved. I want to say thank you to the teachers and staff, administration, everyone that makes this thing tick. I want to say a special thank you to bus drivers, because everyone knows I have a special place in my heart for bus drivers. And right now you are doing the thing. I mean, I literally see the same bus all day, just whipping around the city because they're going multiple times to multiple places. So I appreciate you guys getting our kids safely to their destination. That is a huge deal. And then last but not least, I want to thank the community and parents. I know that you guys are dealing with a lot too. As a parent, I understand this is definitely a complicated reintegration into school. Lots of things to consider. So we are all in this together. Even if it doesn't feel that way, we are. So appreciate all of you guys. All right, next on our agenda, we have the strategic planning, future ready students. Tiffany Shireman, what you got for us?
Hi, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Tiffany Shireman, Chief of Staff here. Can I get a confirmation that you can see the screen?
Yep, we see the screen.
Excellent. I just want to do one technical, make sure we're all on the same page. Bridget, can you do a sound check to make sure that you have sound?
I'm here.
Excellent, great. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for entertaining this topic tonight. I am here together tonight with an amazing team with Gail Juno Butler, who you've met before, who is our strategic planning coach. She's here tonight with us, gathering more information, listening to the presentation, and also here should there be any questions. She's available to us tonight. We also have Bridget Daisy, who's the Executive Director of Clackamas Workforce Partnership, and Amy Black, who works also at the partnership with youth programs as their director. I will introduce here in just a second some of the topics that they'll be speaking about. Just to orient everyone, I will lead through a few slides and then we'll trade, and Bridget will project her own slides from her computer. So there'll be a bit of a tech moment there. So everyone, tonight we are here to provide an update on strategic plan, the plan renewal process that we're moving through this year. On September 9th, 2021, this board received a presentation outlining the timeline and process to be used to develop the school district's next strategic plan. And with the assistance of our consultant partner, Dr. Juno Butler, a 3-phase process has been designed to develop the next strategic plan over the course of this school year. We're now solidly in the discovery phase, where we are gathering information to best understand the current status, as well as the future dreams for the school district. Since the beginning of the school year, we have undertaken a number of steps in this discovery process. A number of pieces have happened. First, we have a multilingual strategic planning website that is launched. Messaging about the strategic planning process has been circulated broadly among stakeholders in multiple languages. An initial list of documents to review as part of our environmental scan. So in addition to all of the other pieces that we're undertaking, Dr. Juno Butler will lead some of the executive team through reviewing a number of documents that help to memorialize and serve as artifacts about our school district. A discovery focus group facilitation training was held. We will be holding some culturally specific focus groups and have trained some staff facilitators to lead those so that there's cultural affinity, language affinity, racial affinity, depending on the group during that discovery session. A visioning session has been held with the executive team. It was a day-long visioning session. We also have drafted and are ready to put out into the field at the end of October a staff, parent, and community survey. It's been developed and is in the process of being translated, ready to get out into the field. You can anticipate that roughly around October 25th. Could be October 22nd, October 25th. We're still tightening up that timeline. It will be out in the field until November 3rd. And then we have 23, we had at the time of this slide, 18 focus groups scheduled in October, and I believe we're now at 23 discovery groups scheduled through the month of October. This evening, Gail and I are really looking forward to your hearing from the Clackamas Workforce Partnership about future work trends and the future of work. So in terms of discovery, understanding where work is headed will be important for the board as well as our community. And our executive team received, prior to the visioning session that we started through, received this same presentation or a very similar presentation. So I know you're in for a treat to hear tonight. Also this evening, North Clackamas staff will, Dr. Reggiani in particular will lead a presentation about our annual Youth Truth Survey. And that data also comes into play through this discovery sessions or the discovery phase of the strategic planning. And in fact is at the heart of a lot of what we need to be discussing as we consider the future. So with all of that here together tonight, we'll transition the slides over. I will stop sharing. Bridget from the Workforce Partnership will begin to share her slides and share her screen. And then at the conclusion, you're welcome to ask any questions should you want. And then it's a separate presentation entirely for Youth Truth.
Thank you, Tiffany. Good evening. I'm thrilled to join you this evening to talk about the future of work in Clackamas County. Again, I'm Bridget Daisy. I'm the Executive Director of Clackamas Workforce Partnership, and I'm joined by my colleague, Amy Black. Amy, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi all, thank you very much for having us here. Amy Black, I'm the Youth Program Manager at Clackamas Workforce Partnership.
And I'm going to move that out of your way so you're not having to look at my slide or my photos. So this this presentation was created for North Clackamas School District. We did a fair amount. We've been keeping track of trends and reports and analysis from local economists, state economists, all the way up through national trends and futurists. And what I would say is that we created this for you. So this was a fantastic opportunity for us to really dig in and look at our national perspective, state and local. And so what is true is that we can expect continuous change. COVID has expedited some trends that we were anticipating and slowed down some others. And so what we're really excited about is where the opportunities will present themselves. The future of work is nothing if not human. Our humanness will be the value add in the future. Technology alone doesn't create transformation and business impact, but people empowered with the right skills, technology, and solutions will. It's time to rethink how, where, and why we all work. A little bit about Clackamas Workforce Partnership. We are one of 9 local workforce development boards statewide. You can see that us and Lane are the only 2 that serve 1 county. What is true about us is we are all nonprofit 501c3s. We are required to not provide direct services, and instead what we are strategic conveners. And I'll get to our primary functions in just a moment. But what we do is we invest in our local communities through public and private partnerships and braiding investments. Oregon Workforce Partnership is our statewide association of local workforce boards and meets regularly to talk about best practices, what's happening in our region, where we're alike, where we're different, and how we can work better together. So the 13 functions as required by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that's overseen by the Department of Labor. I'm not going to go through each of these 13, but what I do want to do is highlight a few of them. In developing a local plan, our local plan is a 2 to 4 year plan and guides the public workforce system with improvements in how it serves. The convening role is probably my favorite part of the job. We get to set the table for public, private, and nonprofit partners to guide decisions, programming, services, and fill gaps and barriers for people and employers to connect. Workforce is just another way to say people. So anything that connects with folks' ability to reach their goals related to work and learning is part of our mission. Employer engagement is done through a variety of ways, like our sector strategies, coordination with economic development partners, hiring events, and learning opportunities. The career pathways development is done, of course, in concert with our education partners. And since careers are changing, so too must the way people get to those opportunities. And we are exploring more outside of traditional paths in education. Coordination with education providers is key to our work, pre-K all the way through adult learning or cradle to career and beyond. We are striving to be more human-centered in reducing bureaucracy as often as possible. When we think of our vision and how equity shows up in our communities, we know that our systems are mostly measured by outputs rather than outcomes. And we're trying to actively challenge that through our own strategic plan, as well as our partners. Is it possible for us to move to more targeted universalism? We also know that the social determinants of health are impacting folks' ability to work and learn. And so though the public workforce system will stay within scope, all other systems have direct impact on someone's ability to be successful. We focus on skill building plus placement plus retention, plus advancement within any job that leads to good quality wages. And our system is data rich and analysis poor. Access to economists and labor analysts. We do have access to economists and labor analysts, but there is a disconnect. How we tell a common story about how we support people and business is something that our system is working even harder to achieve. And not a day goes by that you don't see multiple articles about what is happening around the workforce. Low enrollments and dropouts in higher education and training. Companies will automate. Not enough people to do all of the jobs, as we heard earlier. Impacts of climate change. Reality of economic mobility. infrastructure investments, burnout and mental health, housing and childcare shortages will have lasting impacts. Hybrid and digital work options will continue and increase. Student loan debt will hold people back. Artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things will be infused more into the work. Everything that we are seeing today, we've been talking about for the last several years. And now we have an opportunity to change policy to reflect what people are really needing. So this next part, we're going to start at the national level, and we're going to work our way down to our local level. So what I want to talk about is in every meeting, employers are extremely challenged to find the employees right now. You are competing with every other industry, not just education. A very recent JOLTS report nationally looked at jobs. There were 10.9 million jobs open across the country, and that exceeded the unemployed by 2 million people. So we have an almost 1-for-1 match of people who are unemployed to the jobs that are available in our community. And so we know that we have to utilize and train people to do the things that are going to be necessary in the future of work. McKinsey put together these foundational skills and competencies. We will still have one foot in the old world as this new world takes shape. How to create a 21st century worker depends on these skills and competencies like self-leadership and cognitive, being able to communicate and work effectively with teams, as well as being able to better recognize how technology is changing and utilize it, and being able to utilize it, fix it as necessary. I recently heard a stat that in the next 5 years, or the skills that we're learning today in technology in 5 years will almost be unrecognizable and will be less effective. Just think about when email was considered a high-tech skill. And so many of the jobs that are at risk will be around for several years, those are at risk of automation will be around still for the next several years, but will continue to change in what is required as those industry changes. Some of these things might be not surprising to you, but what you'll notice here is that the jobs that are most at risk of automation are rote, are things that are that you'd have to memorize things, or things that are repetitive in nature. Again, it's the human skills that will be most in demand as we move forward in our workforce. So state level concerns. As of March of 2020, our unemployment rate was 3.6%. We have recovered 3/4 of the jobs that we lost within the last 18 months. And just to give some perspective, in the last recession, we were 2 full years out of the recession before we started seeing job recovery. Oregon employers in the last 8 months have added 80,000 jobs. So prior to this, in any other year, the most jobs that were added were 61,000. So what we know is that things are starting to pick up pace. Our unemployment rate is hovering around 4.8%, and the number of jobs that are available are increasing every day. And some of those impacted industries include manufacturing, retail, e-commerce, healthcare. Remote work is an exception still. 1 out of 3 jobs could be done remotely over the height of the pandemic, and now it's around 15%, which means that most people, full-time jobs must be done out of the home. Pandemic impacted industries, manufacturing, retail, and construction. 2 of the 5 are identified as our targeted sectors for Clackamas Workforce Partnership. So we cannot build fast enough. Automation and supply chains are impacting our ability to do business, and new technologies are disrupting us even today. And we also want young people to be learning the new skills across the variety of industries and jobs that are available, but they shouldn't have to worry about if they're going to be able to eat, have a roof over their head, or in order to complete their programs of study. And so these numbers are really alarming to us. So we know that we have to provide holistic support to our young people as they're trying to transition into the world of work. And knowing that our cost of living is increasing by the day. Minimum wage right now is $12.75. That is certainly not enough to be able to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in our metro area. And so what we need to do is talk about what are good jobs, what are quality jobs, and what are the skills that are going to be able to help people be competitive within those occupations. So let's talk a little bit more about the Portland metro area and what's going on in Clackamas County. So the Portland metro area did lose jobs overnight. What we know back in 2020, in February, we were having one of the best economies that we've seen in a long time. And then almost overnight, we lost 144,000 jobs in a matter of a month. There's a 1-for-1 match again for job openings for unemployed. Our labor force participation rate is under 63%. Comfortably, we'd like it between 64, 65% or higher. So 61 means that we're starting to get people back to work, but we still have a lot of people who aren't coming back to work. I'm sure some of you have heard about the Great Resignation or people that are quitting their jobs in pretty alarming numbers. Those are things that we're paying very close attention to and talking with employers about what does it take to attract new people into this space. Also, and later on, I have a graph about our older workers versus our younger population. But what I would say is our older workers are going to be the population, over 55 are going to be the population that we will really be leaning on to carry us through this next 5, 10, 15 years, because that will be the bulk of our population. So let's talk about some industries that are happening or that are available in the metro area. This slide shows the breakup of the different jobs that are available by industry across the metro. The size of the pie and its pieces will continue to fluctuate over the coming years. And maybe not by very much, but the occupations within those jobs will continue to shift. The most in-demand hard skills that were in job postings this last month were working with numbers and applied math, leadership and customer service, and healthcare. Again, probably not surprising to what's needed across our economy. These are the top sectors, the clusters that they're paying special and close attention to at Clackamas County Economic Development: advanced manufacturing, wood product manufacturing, manufacturing in general, healthcare, and high tech software. Those are connected to our targeted sectors. The other sectors that we have identified in Clackamas Workforce Partnership is construction and then early care and education. There's a PDF that goes along with these slides that will explain more about, where the trends, what's growing. But Clackamas County represented 10% of Oregon's business firms, and about 71% of Clackamas County firms have 4 or fewer employees, similar to Oregon 70%. So most of our businesses in the employer community are small to medium sized. So again, the Great Resignation is upon us. People are having to make different choices around employment. And what I would say is that when we think about equity, it is a zero-sum game. There is a reason to talk about raising the quality of life for people and what that will mean for the business imperative. So we don't think that equity should or is a controversial conversation. In fact, it's something that we should all be embracing, because we need every person to be gainfully employed and participating in our economy with the talents, gifts, and capacities that they have available to them. So back to our demographics changing, Oregon saw a 0 increase in the number of children from 2010 to 2020, even as overall population grew in Oregon by 10%, mostly through in-migration. Of the Oregon counties, only 4 of them saw noticeable growth, Clackamas being one of them. And so even though we saw a slight uptick, about 1% in Clackamas County, We know that most of the population that, again, we'll be leaning on is 55 and older. And so how we train people to, again, have those human skills and walk along technology, it's not just young people that we're thinking about, but we're thinking about our older workers and populations that are in the workforce today. And then when you think of our students and what they're going to be needing, we'll talk a little bit more about, again, some of those skills. So again, equity, I would just mention right now that the Partners in Diversity study that was done a couple of years ago that really highlighted the retention, the recruitment and retention of people of color within the region. It is a sobering report. It's eye-opening, and what I would recommend is reviewing it. There are fantastic recommendations in there around how to engage with communities of color, but really what it comes down to is feeling a sense of belonging. Building community, feeling safe. Once we get past the job or the wages, it's all of those other things that are going to help keep people here. And so a wage might get somebody in the door, but it's certainly not going to be enough to keep them. So as a society, as a business culture, we do need to think about how do we keep people here that are different from what an organization might be used to. This slide was in the Workforce Talent and Development Board talent assessment. And again, it just shares that we are crosswalking and talking about those individuals that need more support in order to, again, access full employment and training and education. And so how our system serves needs to evolve in significant ways. So Clackamas Workforce Partnership partners with Work Systems and Workforce Southwest Washington because we share the same labor shed across the Portland metropolitan statistical area. And we're working on a quality jobs initiative. And what does it mean to prioritize workforce equity across different employers in the area? And so what we're developing right now within this initiative is a framework to guide what quality jobs, good jobs look like, being infused with information from job seekers, current job seekers and students, as well as the employer community. Because again, it's about making sure that we're crosswalking those conversations and what's going to be necessary. We anticipate that this will open the door for conversations that are absolutely necessary to be having, and many of our employers with our employer partners across the community. And I believe that they're very open to it and expecting conversations like this. Some other trends to be paying attention to, certainly the climate crisis and how that is going to impact people's ability to work and learn. When there's a catastrophe, everything kind of moves into that direction. We saw that with the wildfires, we saw that with the snowstorm. Those things are not going to, that will not be the last of those. So we need to be able to respond accordingly, and that means working together. We're going to continue to see career pauses, of course, historic burnout. There's a lot of people who are working because there's not enough staff to take on all of the responsibilities, and so people are working mandatory overtime. We're going to start to feel that in the coming months as people really feel that strain for their families and themselves and needing to take a break. So we're going to need to expand mental health workforce and behavioral health. And of course, making sure that our workforce is agile and resilient are going to be main areas of focus for us. So just circling back to some of those competencies, people begin learning these skills, critical thinking, project or negotiation, and orientation, emotional intelligence, really young, birth to 3. And so I can't reiterate enough that these skills that are learned in our pre-K all the way through to grade 12, the classroom is not the only place that young people are learning. And so we want to make sure that they feel supported both in and outside of the classroom, and after school programs and expanding learning opportunities and coursework, ensuring that they're feeling as prepped and connected to community and continuing to receive that support. All of these things that we're going to need, again, those building blocks are starting when they're so very young. So looking ahead, how do we connect the public with new and relevant technologies? Degrees are losing some of their meaning. And so people are moving more, companies are moving more toward stackable credentials, badges, and then quick training programs. So we'll have to certify and recognize people's skills in different ways outside of degree programs. We're also going to have to expand apprenticeships and earn while you learn models. Because of student debt becoming so alarmingly high for people, we need to think about how people can learn the skills while they're still making some money at this while they learn those skills. So what does the future look like? What's key is adaptability, paying attention, and knowing that we're in a world of dynamic change. There are several initiatives that we believe are going to be tangential to systems change and the things that we want to see. Preschool for All, certainly in Multnomah County, is a guiding star for the Washington County and Clackamas area to see what can we do to help ensure that every child has access to an early learning program or preschool experience. The Quality Jobs Initiative I mentioned earlier, the Supportive Housing Services measure was built to be a systems change initiative. So there are many things that we see kind of coalescing into a common direction. And what's going to be important is that coordination across these different systems, initiatives, projects, and organizations. There's a lot to cover in the future of work, and I certainly just touched on a little snippet of it. But if there are these are other conversations that we're having pretty regularly with partners, from systems change to the industry sectors, entrepreneurship. What is work-based learning and apprenticeships? We want to ensure that these conversations include entities like North Clackamas School District at the table to help make sure that you're infusing us with the right information and vice versa, and that we're partnering as closely together as possible. So partners across sectors are going to be really key. This is a list of our current board of directors. Our board of directors is a 50% plus one private sector. So we hover between 23 and 25 board members. We also have requirements around labor and apprenticeship programs, education, as well as government that are all approved by the Board of County Commissioners. All of the slides and all of the stats that I referenced are in these links available in the slide deck. And I will stop sharing my screen to see if you have any questions for us.
Thank you for that presentation. I'll start with you, Director Bauer.
Oh, thank you, Chair Ford. This is exciting. I mean, and it's timely, as you know, for our strategic plan. You had a quote that data rich, how we tell the story. And there was so much there, even though I read it ahead of time, skimmed it, still there was so much more that caught my eye. I'm excited to hear about the equity focus, raising the quality of life for everyone, and that you've identified so many barriers that we need to work on. The childcare, there was a forum this week, and I know several of us on the board listened to that. It's so instrumental in getting people back to work. You mentioned even student loan debt, homelessness. I mean, I'm just excited about the work that you're doing. But even 1 of 4 are 55 years and older. So you mentioned the retraining. So and the other ways outside for educating. So I'm sure you are in connection with our Saban Skills Center and have done some work with them in the past. Is that true?
Absolutely, absolutely. Amy could speak to that a little bit more, so I'll let her.
But thank you. That's my only question now.
Yeah, we excuse me, are definitely in touch with them. I'm actually actually going over there next week to meet with Curtis and have another tour, just to make sure I'm up on what's going on and for some partnership moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bauer. Director Schrader.
I enjoyed reading the packet, but thank you very much for the read, because it helped to solidify what amazing work this is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Way.
I also want to echo other directors' comments. Really great presentation. I really love that in the beginning, Bridget, you had talked about the social determinants of health and just how everything is sort of this web, and it's obviously education is connected to housing, which is connected to access to healthcare and better wages and all of that. So it's just such a great reminder that being in education, we don't do this work on our own, and that we actually need to continue to reach out and build relationships all across the board in many different sectors. So I just want to make that comment. And I also am just thinking, obviously about centering our students and just what kind of workplaces they're going to be in after they graduate from high school. Career technical education opportunities, obviously, that are currently provided right now at Saban Schellenberg, and always trying to continue to add more courses and more options. And I know our board is super supportive of that. But I was also just thinking about the parents that we have in our district. So, the parents are also going through the very same things that you had talked about, pandemic fatigue, so many other things that you had mentioned. So again, just thinking holistically about more partnerships and what can we do with social service agencies and other companies to also help support families, I think would be worth talking about. And also just really appreciate that this is getting put into our strategic plan, because the plan will hopefully give us more of that focus in terms of what are the areas that we want to focus and work on for the next couple of years. So whoever did that, I think it was Director Shireman and Director James, thank you for putting in this piece to go along with our strategic planning.
Excellent, thank you. Director McVeigh.
Thank you for the presentation, it was great. And I too love the idea of public-private partnerships, and having big business or any business having a voice on how what they're looking for in workforce development as we ready kids for college or career readiness. We need to hear their voices. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Director Perez.
Thank you, Board Chair. Thank you, Bridget, and thank you, Amy. Echo what my fellow board directors said as far as awesome presentation. And I agree, Bridget, something you said about, I think Director Wade just commented on this too, about partnerships. I think anytime you can form partnerships or create a village, ultimately that benefits our children at the end of the day. I always go back to the children. There's no greater mission than our children. And one thing as I was reading through the packet and listening to your presentation, I guess this is more of a comment than a question, but I'm always hopeful. I grew up with my dad who worked outside in the cold, weathery, wind chill blizzards of Buffalo, New York, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So I rarely saw him. He worked Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But I'm always hopeful that one day there'll be a significant shift in our society where organizations will shift their focus so that the parent and the family and the child is at the center of each work organization, so that parents could take a day off and go watch their child if they're in the baseball game or soccer game, or allow kids to come to work sometimes, or offer parenting groups, or offers stipends or not stipends, money for daycare, so that it's safe daycare, flexible work arrangements, flexible work schedules, everything centered around stabilizing the family, especially families with children. because I think there's something to that in the long term. And if every organization did that, every work organization did that, I think we'd be in a better place today, as far as everything you touched on today. That's just my humble opinion, but I think that would be something, if we can shift that in our culture, that would be huge. Just a comment.
Thank you for that. I have a few questions, if I may. I will preference my questions by saying I work closely with workforce agencies in Multnomah County, so my questions come from more information, but I'm curious. My first question is around the outputs and equity in that discussion there. Is there any inputs that we're going to be measuring in order to make sure that equity is actually being achieved?
Absolutely. We measure demographics, both race, age, gender, and other information. Things that we don't track, which I think would be inappropriate, would be to ask around LGB, but not T. We'll be talking about that, but those are all things that we are that we do track and are talking about pretty regularly, about who we are serving and how they're gaining access to it. The other way that I would talk about the inputs and how we attract people in, the front door of our system is WorkSource. And so if people don't know how to gain access to it, and it feels like a secret in our community, that's problematic. And so we are actively working with community-based organizations and partnering with faith-based organizations to get that information to communities that wouldn't traditionally hear about us through collecting unemployment insurance or through other ways by accessing other partners. So, we have ways of that we're trying to gain more information, and we also think that partnerships with the school districts and sharing information out to families about what's available within our programs would also be another conduit for making sure that we're building more equity and access to the programs for people who really need it.
Excellent. I'm glad you touched upon that, because that's my biggest concern, is that a lot of the work around you guys is considered the system. And so many people that look like me don't necessarily want to engage. And so I have some concern there. It's very difficult to get the information if people don't want to engage. So I appreciate you recognizing that that is something that you guys are working on. My next question is around the leaning on the 55 plus group. I think as a board, it's not necessarily a question, as a comment, we need to be really paying attention to that trend that will impact our bonds, that will impact a lot of things that we do in the future. So we need to be clearly looking at that. In addition to that, I think this is an important study for parents to be paying attention to, because I think that as we all live our day in and day out lives, we forget that there's a bigger structure, and the strategic plan of the district is something that we're currently following an old plan. So the future plan is where you should be paying attention. And I know there's things that you want to see done in the district, but these are the presentations that determine your future experience. And so it's really important that you pay attention now and get engaged now, so that your future experience is different for you and your child and your family. I do have a question about COVID and jobs. It seems as though a lot of the terms in this presentation have a lot to do with what I would say typical trends that would be reported out. I don't see any trends related to COVID jobs. You had a very high percentage of job injections recently. And I know, based on the work I do, many of those are funded based on COVID specificity, whether it's a health care worker, a tracker, or whatever that is. They've been funded over the last couple of months, which has also increased jobs. So where in this research is there any discussion on COVID related positions?
Well, all of this was reports from the last 18 months. So there is some impact, but what we don't know is what the jobs will look like in the next 6 months to a year. I think there's a lot that's undetermined because we don't know how quickly we're going to be able to recover and build some resiliency. And so to your point, there are a lot of jobs that are connected to ARPA funds or CARES funds. But we know that we had a people shortage before COVID hit in 2020. And so that was only exacerbated with COVID. And so when we have a one-to-one match and we have attrition and people who are retiring and leaving the workforce, there are lots of jobs, and there is going to be a lot of need for people to have the skills to be able to get connected to those jobs. And so the jobs of the future, I see as a lot of construction, a lot of healthcare. If we're paying, paying attention to what's going on at the federal level, and if they do pass any of those big funding packages, that's going to be a huge boost into our workforce for several years to come. And we know we don't have enough houses. We don't have enough, that our roads need to be repaired, and we know that our healthcare infrastructure is really vulnerable right now. So those are the jobs that we're paying really, really close attention to.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear that, because I do think that a lot of this presentation, though excellent, for me felt some of the same. And I feel like there's been a movement of a mindset that we need to recognize. And I hope that we can interject that in our strategic plan, because otherwise this plan will be too far behind and our kids will not be ready. And so it's really important that we get in front of the mindset change, not just the workforce change. There are more people who desire entrepreneurship. There are more people who desire to create their own workplaces that don't exist yet. And how do we help our kids get in that lane and not just in the typical term lanes that we've been talking about? So for me, I love the presentation. I'm excited about the information, but I also want to see some innovation in the terms and the way that we go so that our kids are actually prepared for what's coming and not what was.
Absolutely agree.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that presentation. I think we have the Youth Truth Survey results next, which hopefully will speak to what our kids are needing or desiring at least.
Thank you.
Miss Shelley, are you there? Oh, there you go.
I am trying to share my screen with you. Can you please give me a thumbs up if you can see the Youth Truth presentation? Excellent. I am happy to hear that. Thank you, Board Chair Ford, and thank you, directors, for the opportunity to share this information with you tonight. It definitely has a tie into our last presentation. We talk about future ready, and that being one of the goals for our students, and that also being a strong value within North Clackamas. Tonight, what I'm going to be sharing with you is information not just about what Youth Truth is and the purpose of why we use it as a surveying tool to sample from our strategic stakeholder groups of students, staff, and families, but what the key findings were for this year and how we're going to be moving forward with using that information. North Clackamas has used Youth Truth for a couple reasons that are very important to us and part of our core values. And this comes from the belief that stakeholder voice is a critical component in our leadership and our decision making. We believe that authentically listening to student, staff, and family voice will help us make better decisions and help us also understand the viewpoints and lived experiences from those our decisions impact most in our district. Again, really centering on the experiences of our students, our families, and our staff. We use this for a needs assessment across the district in different areas, both programmatically at the school level and then also at the district level. We use it to drive professional development for our staff. And then, as you heard from Chief of Staff Shireman and also from our last presentation, we will also be using this as part of our school and district improvement planning, including our strategic plan. Having the voice of our students in our strategic plan process is really key. As we look at the use of youth truth, we talk about perceptions and the perceptions of our students, our staff, and our families. Perception is important because that is the reality that people are experiencing and a critical component for us to listen to. And again, going back to that piece that authentically listening matters, the experiences that our community members have, our teachers have, and that our students have help inform us about the ways in which they learn in our schools, our students, the way that our staff grow, and the way that our communities can thrive. Youth truth is based on this powerful principle that taking getting information and then giving timely feedback will help us make the changes that we need to within our system. In North Clackamas, we typically survey right around the beginning of the second semester of secondary school. So at the end of February, and that's a really important point for us. It gives us an opportunity that within 2 weeks' time of giving the survey, we have an opportunity to receive the data back and do deep analysis. If we needed to make mid-year shifts, we certainly could, but that allows us also a longer window of time to be able to do professional development and planning for professional improvement for the following year. All right, the survey is anonymous. That's something that's really important. It is not tied to a specific student number. It does not integrate with our student information system. Students, staff, and families self-identify. And they self-identify in the categories which they choose, or they could say, I choose not to say. For students, we also ask if they are a participant in special education or in ELD programs in English language development. That helps us understand two very key perspectives of student population groups that we pay close attention to for a variety of reasons. And for each data point that we look at, we can disaggregate the information by the components of that student's identity. We can compare data to other North Clackamas schools, let's say this elementary school here to this elementary school here, but we can also compare North Clackamas's experience to other, say, suburban districts, other like-sized districts across the country as well. The staff and community surveys are also anonymous. One thing that's really important to note, this is a grades 3 through 12 survey opportunity for students. We need our students to have a certain level of navigability within a survey and a certain level of literacy, although the questions can be 100% read aloud to students. And also the surveys are available in multiple languages. In North Clackamas, we each have chosen to look at the overall school experience within our surveys. And this includes for staff and families. There's a triangulation of the key elements. We ask questions in the categories that are listed here on the screen. And this year, in addition to the ones that are listed, we asked questions about the COVID experience as well as equity. It would be a little bit turning a blind eye to not ask the questions about the effects of COVID on our students, our staff, and our community, knowing how large of an impact it was and how we can respond as a school system to provide additional supports and the things that our community and our students and our staff need as well. In North Clackamas, we had quite a bit of response. We surveyed this year in April instead of in February. We were just beginning the transition back to hybrid, and to not complicate things more, we shifted the survey window to April, where we had consistent stability of hybrid across our systems. So this April, with students, staff, and families, over 14,000 surveys were given, and a lot of information back to the district in those three rich categories of students, staff, and families. When we talk with our staffs about youth truth data, and quite honestly, any data point that is about self-reflection, we ask staff to really consider how we're showing up to the data and thinking of feedback as a gift. This is a gift for us to, with a moment of humility, to be able to say, this is information about how others are experiencing us, and we have a responsibility to respond and to listen. And we can do that in a variety of ways. The first being not being defensive. No, that's not accurate. There's no way that could be quite right. Or dismissing it. It's just that kiddo's opinion. Actually, that's that kiddo's opinion for a very good reason. It's their lived experience. And then to not dismiss that, and to not be dejected by some news that might not feel like the best. Like, wow, I was really working hard on that at my school, and that's, or to also not downplay it. Oh, it was just a bad day and consider it as a one-off. This is truly the lived experiences of our stakeholder groups, and to take it with that level of seriousness. So in this section of the presentation, I'd like to share some of the data points that stood out to us and some that were also very significant. In the data, we look for trends and change from year to year with both positives as well as areas of improvement. I think it's really critical to point out that we're not looking for a highlight reel of celebrations and victory laps. While that is critical, because we want to maintain the things that we're doing well and continue to capitalize on those, we need to take an inward look at the things that aren't as strong and the areas that we can improve in. Here we see the strengths and relationships from our staff and the area of improvement for professional development, for example. So we see the staff surveys here, the highest overall rated theme, and then also the overall lowest rated theme, areas that we want to continue to maintain our strength and areas that we know that we could improve. This one here again is about staff. We paid specific attention to both the highest rated items and the lowest rated items. This also allowed us to see how North Clackamas School District rated compared to other districts across the country. And in this particular slide, we can see the highest overall rated for questions for staff compared to other participating schools in the areas of respect and school culture and instructional practice and the ability to learn at work. And then we also see that professional development, again, is an area that staff highlighted, saying that we could use some more support. This particular slide is on the family survey. So we saw staff, now we're going to highlight families. The gratitude for staff and their efforts definitely came out here. You'll see also that on each of these slides, there is an accompanying quote. There is an opportunity in each of the surveys given for the individual receiving the survey to write in their own words, their response to the questions. So what we've done here in looking at this anonymously, again, there's no names that are associated with here, but we can tell this by demographic. For example, this first quote was a parent of a kindergartner who was expressing their gratitude. We matched a quote to the theme of the survey that we found. Our lowest overall rated item theme for families was around engagement. And this was something that we saw in multiple levels, that desire to have more places for students to engage. And we know this to be true, that our students struggled with connection during the pandemic year when we were in school closures, and not having the opportunity to see one another socially was impacted, not just by school closures, but by the pause our community saw on so many other youth activities. So that was a compounding factor for families that we noted here. In the family survey, the highest overall rated question for families was in the area of school safety. And it rated high, while the need for more academic rigor and family connection with the school was also expressed as a need. Our students shared that the culture of the school and the relationships with their staff and their teachers were highly rated, specifically in our high schools and our middle schools, but even our younger students were talking about the connections with staff. And while academic engagement and connections with peers were also needs, and that's reflected in something that our parent survey also said, so that you see a place for that triangulation there. The highest and lowest rated questions from students echoed those trends that I just showed on the previous slide as well. So this is that place where we're starting to look at that trend data from our students, staff, and families, which helps us put a stronger highlight on the areas of strength as well as the areas of improvement. From this last year, there were some trends that we saw in 2021. Our staff survey results, all themes improved from 2020 to 2021, with the biggest increase in culture and engagement. And I want to just pause and highlight for a moment that in 2020, we took the survey during our traditional window in February. So this was pre-pandemic data. So everything that you're seeing tonight when we talk about year to year increases, decreases, or changes. We're going from pre-pandemic experiences to fully in the pandemic experiences. Families and students and staff had just returned to hybrid across the board. So our secondary students, for example, had just been in school in hybrid for 2 weeks. So the comparison is in 2 different years with 2 significantly different contexts. Our middle school themes also improved. Culture, school culture in middle school moving up 16%. And then the one area of decline was in the area of professional development by 1%. Our high school themes for all high school staff also improved. And the rating above the national median, which was really exciting to see in our high school experience. In this particular chart, you can see 2 bars for the middle school staff and then 2 additional bars for high school staff. The top bar in each of the sections is for the 2021 survey year, and the bar on the bottom is for the previous year, so it's a little bit smaller. So again, we took the 2020 survey pre-pandemic. This helps us understand the significance when we see change. So in this particular one, we see that this particular question, on a scale of 1 to 5, our middle school staff rated the question, students and staff care about each other, at 4.16 out of 5, up from 3.97 the previous year. You see a thin little gray line in between the 2 bars, and that indicates other Oregon schools, because this is a survey that is given. Many school districts do this, not only across Oregon, but across the United States. And there's a little teeny tick to the right-hand side, and that gives us an indication of where the Oregon average schools landed. And while middle school rated this question below Oregon's average, our high school staff rated the question, I feel that my work at my school is valued, higher than other Oregon schools, as well as higher than our previous year. Our family survey, 5 out of the 6 themes in the elementary survey had little change. And the theme with the most change was in school safety, an increase in school safety for our elementary families experience. Middle school families reported improvements from 2020 in school safety as well, but also in engagement. And for high school, similar to middle school, our high school's families saw improvement in that school safety and engagement as well. And the perceptions of culture, however, did decline, as well as resources. This is that same type of bar chart that we saw in the previous slides, but specific to high school families. And across the top, we can see that, again, the families were rating this particular question on a scale of 1 to 5. And down below also in a scale of 1 to 5. Our student surveys. This was really exciting to see. 4 out of 5 of our themes at our elementary schools improved from the previous year. And that was really exciting. 3 of which improved by double-digit percentage points. You can see here that our students experience a strong relationship with their teachers. This particular data point really spoke to me about the lift that our staff had this last year during the pandemic. I just was filled with gratitude when I reflected on this data point. The need to connect deeply with our students, the heroic efforts every day that staff took made a difference, and our students felt it. They felt culture within a school, even though they were experiencing school in a virtual format, an increase of 46 percentage points, and increasing their instructional methods as well. Our middle school students improved in every theme in the survey as well. And again, this isn't about their personal performance increasing. This is about positives of their overall school experience that lead to high outcomes for students, changes in relationship, culture, and academic change. Our high school students saw improvement in 4 out of 6 of the themes, with the biggest change in culture again, academic challenge, and relationships. There wasn't a change in students' perception in college and career readiness, even during the pandemic year. And the students' perception of belonging and peer collaboration did decline. This speaks to one of the things that we noted from the parent survey of the students really seeking that opportunity to connect with one another. In this last bullet point, I mentioned college and career readiness, and this speaks to Bridget Daisy's portion of the last presentation. We are looking at year-to-year data and how we're preparing our students for college and career readiness. Ready future, future ready. This is a value in North Clackamas that we see also in what happened this last Wednesday with our secondary teams putting together College and Career Day for all of our high school families across North Clackamas. This is one of the data points that we can measure year to year our effectiveness and how we're reaching our students and their perceptions of being college and career ready. These are bar charts that also talk about the students' experience. The top one is elementary students, and notice that there's a scale change of 1 to 3, but also notice that the students rated this question so highly about their use of class time at the 91st percentile, significantly growing from the previous year. And willingness to get extra help on their schoolwork as needed. Definitely rating higher as well for our students here in middle school. Middle school is a tough time. It was for me as a kiddo, and that's where I decided to go as a teacher. The place where we can experience the most social, emotional, and personal growth and change as young people growing into who they're going to become. It was really exciting to see the growth in our middle school students at a time when we were experiencing the pandemic. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next slide here. This is our high school students and their perceptions, as well as our elementary students and their perceptions about school. You also see down at the bottom, you can see the year-to-year growth. So this particular slide at the bottom, this data point at the bottom shows that our high school students and their experience, my teachers give me assignments that help me better understand the subject. And we can see that our district in 2021 at a 3.65, and that growth from the 2 previous years where we had some stagnation. Again, a celebration of the effort of staff and the lift during the pandemic year. Here's something that I'd like to share with you a little bit deeper. At the very beginning, I shared how students could self-identify. Self-identification is really important. It's the student telling us who they are from their own voice. It's also about staff telling us who they are from their own voice, as well as families talking about their identity contingency. And we intentionally examine data by student populations. And when we do this, we can better inform our decision-making, whether that's allocation of resources or services to those students in areas where resources and services are most needed, and also where they can have the biggest impact for student outcomes and experiences. It informs those decisions when we dig a little bit deeper. There is important data when we say 87% of all of our students, but when we dig a little deeper, we want to find out the experiences of each of our student groups to better make decisions within North Clackamas. So with that lens, we were looking at the students' experiences and where are gaps in the spring of 2020. Not everybody experienced the pandemic in the same way. It was impactful, but it was impactful to students, staff, and families in different ways than one another. And it would be dangerous to assume that each person experienced it similarly when they absolutely did not. When we disaggregate the data by elementary schools, we can see that our Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander students only represent 1% of the population, but they are a critical population. They rated lower than their peers in nearly all of the themes. That's important for us to know about the student experience for those students who have this identity contingency, and important for us to pay attention to as their school system and leaders and staff. Student perception of challenge at our elementary schools decreased as the students got older. Our younger students feel that it's academically challenging, and then you can see down here in the bottom bars that our 4th and 5th grade students are not seeing the same challenge or don't experience school as being as challenging the older they get. Something else that's important, and this speaks to gender identity. In Oregon, it is part of Oregon law that students and families and any staff person on public records identifies their gender identity by their choice, F, M, or X, female, male, or other. And students who say that they identify in another way than binary rate lower than their peers in all themes. Something, again, that's important for us to know as we love and appreciate each child and who they are. Their experience in our school matters by how they identify. In this particular slide, we're looking at middle school experience. Their grade level perceptions of themes also decline as they get a little bit older. Gender identity popped up here again too, where our students who identify in another way besides male or female rate less positively than their peers in all of the themes. So that's 2 grade bands where we're seeing that repeated. Our male students do rate higher than their peers in belonging and peer collaboration. And I also want to point out specifically this last bullet. Students who identify as straight have more positive perception of all themes compared to their peers who are not straight. So gender identity, sexual orientation of our students, we're showing up in the lowest level. So if you look at the very bottom scale, we have the darker teal colors of male, female, and identifies in another way. We see a very dramatic experience difference within our student groups, something important for us to pay attention to, particularly when we're talking about the social, emotional well-being and mental health of our students. In our high schools, we also looked at the gender identity, race, and self-reported grades and English learners. We didn't just specifically look at these groups. These were the groups, again, where we were pulling out where are the largest gaps in experience, both positive and negative. In gender identity, our female students have slightly more positive perceptions of engagement than their peers, and our male students rated higher in belonging and collaboration, and also college and career readiness. So I'd like to dig into the gap there a little bit more as well. That's the first time that we noticed that gap difference, This one was very important as well. Race and ethnicity. North Clackamas values the identity of each person, and we focus on allowing each individual person to be who they are unapologetically, which is really important. And we also know that paying attention to race, language, culture, and identity matters. It matters for families. It matters for students, it matters for staff. And in respect of our students, we want to make sure that by their identity, embracing the full identity of who they are, that being in school is safe and matters. By race and ethnicity, no major trends across the survey were when disaggregated by race and ethnicity appeared. That is the first time that has happened in the 4 years that we have been surveying at our high school. That is really exciting. But we do note that there are important differences when we get down to the question level. So again, that's another opportunity for us to go deeper. Here's another celebration. English learners who do have a very high graduation rate in North Clackamas as compared to the rest of the state, rated higher than their English only peers in all themes, but most notably belonging and college and career readiness. And this really speaks for me to the program and the teachers who are supporting our students who are learning English. As mentioned, equity was also a focus this year. This particular graph shows the experience by how students identify in 3 different equity area questions. The question for students was, students from my school value people of diverse backgrounds. And the blue bar represents students from my school value people of diverse sexual orientations. The red bar, students from my school value people of diverse races and ethnicities. And the yellow bar, students from my school value people of diverse incomes. Down across the bottom, you see how students self-identify. And while there are notably places where there are high bars, we also can see trends where there are lower bars by student group. And this is important for us to note. While our multiracial students may be having one experience, our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders may be having another. And most notably across all areas of those 3 questions, our Black or African American students are rating their perceptions of people's value of diverse backgrounds lower than others, an area for us to pay attention to. Next steps for us in North Clackamas. Each year after we receive the data back, within 2 to 3 weeks of survey, we receive it back and we walk through the data with our school administrators. We have a trainer from Youth Truth coming out and asking us deep questions, and it allows us to go deeper into the data and allows us to make those mid-course changes during the year and then also inform our planning for the following year. Each school leader also shared a 1-page summary with their school communities in the spring, either in the school newsletter or directly on their website. It's important to provide feedback to the people that we survey. It allows people to know that we authentically listened and that we took into account the information that they shared with us. It's authentic and it's transparent. You also heard earlier that our district will be using the student voice component of Youth Truth for our strategic planning. Having students involved in the strategic plan is critical, and the use of this data allows direct voice and input in our plan. Additionally, schools will continue to use the data from this last sampling for their school improvement throughout this year. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Shelley. Appreciate that great information from our kids and families. Let me get my list up. Director Perez, any questions? Comments?
I was talking to the wall there for a moment. Thank you, Board Chair. Shelley, thank you for the awesome presentation as always. Just have a quick question. One of the results was, I think it was the family survey results where it talked about the one change was in the feeling of safety, and it increased. Let me see here if I could pull it up. Elementary, middle, high school, yeah, it all saw improvement in school safety. I'm just curious, is that, do you know, is that correlated or tied to the fact that we installed security devices on many of the, if not all the schools, I believe, in the past year or so?
We did install those, and thank you for raising that. And there's also multilingual signage on each of those too, so that families have a sense of schools are paying attention much more closely than historically to the safety of our students in schools. While there isn't a direct line there, what that would cause us to do on the personal level with our family groups would be to ask. That is one of the beauties of this data, is it allows us to ask better questions and deeper questions. I'll give you, for example, when we first started Youth Truth a number of years ago, one of our principals decided that the data gave us information, but not enough specific information. So this particular principal at a middle school said, it was data about Black African-American boys specifically. It doesn't tell me the name of the student, but I can see that this experience is happening with this group of kids. He decided to pull those students together over a couple pizza lunches and develop deeper relationships and ask questions with full humility to say, tell me more. How can we do better for you in this school? So when we have data like what you just presented, what you just questioned about school safety and parents, with our parent groups, that would be the opportunity to lean in and say, tell me more. You rated that school safety was something that you felt was improved, or our family said, how was that for you? How did you experience that? And it's through that narrative, it's through that relational component that we can dig deeper and authentically learn how families experienced it. It could have been about COVID protocols. It could have been about, remember, this was also at a time when we had returned to hybrid. So there was a very heightened awareness around health and safety protocols. But we also had the installment of some of our door entry systems across the district. So that becomes an opportunity for more conversation and deeper relationships.
Thank you, Shelley.
Yeah.
Director Way.
Thank you, Chair Ford, and thank you, Dr. Reggiani. I want to make sure that I addressed you correctly. That was a really great presentation, chock full of information. I really appreciated the 14,000, I think, folks who participated in this is quite an amazing number. And I also really want to thank you for showing several slides around the disaggregated data, in particular, you highlighting that we need to pay more attention to the Pacific Islander students that we have in our district, because it is, I feel like the more information, the more data that we can have, the more stories that we can collect from, from students, from the Pacific Islanders especially. I think the more that we can also talk about their strengths and what they bring to our school, in addition to challenges or barriers barriers that they may have. So I just want to stress that importance of that data disaggregation is really important, so that, as you said, every student feels seen and feels heard in our district. And then I also want to, again, like touch on using a strengths-based approach when we're talking with our students around things that they feel like brings them a source of strength, and not from a deficit model, if that makes sense.
It completely does. Yes.
Yes. So I just want to make that comment. But yeah, thank you for the presentation. I also think that, I think in your slides clearly shows that we need to continue affirming students' race and their identities and their ethnicities and their cultures that they bring. We, I think, continue to see students of color experiencing different things as opposed to their other peers. And so I just want to make that point too for the public, because I know that sometimes people are like, why are you so focused on equity all the time? And it's like, this is because why? This is the reason why. It's because our students are saying that they need to feel heard and they need to have their identities affirmed. So I just want to put that out there, and thank you again for your presentation.
You're welcome. I appreciate you talking about that relationship of student identity and experience. I think one of the important things for us in North Clackamas too is to not look at this data in isolation. We will look at this student experience data and also look at our graduation rates and our program participation rates and the participation of students at Sabin-Schellenberg and our post-secondary participation rates, and see where are their relationships. We know that when over time in North Clackamas, doing exactly what you said, paying attention more deeply and intentionally to the identities of our students, we saw at the same time an increase in graduation rates of all of our student groups, our white students, our multiracial students, our Asian students, our Black African-American students, our Hispanic and Latino students, across the board in all of our high schools, we saw this increase. We did too see in that last data snapshot that I gave you with the bars that all student groups are seeing an increase in perception of how students of different groups, the equity questions, are being perceived. Our students across the board are seeing that others are paying better attention and recognizing and accepting students with different backgrounds, similar or different to their own. We do see a difference in their experience, but that perception is something that all of them are experiencing. So that's a lift for each of our students from every one of our student groups. And you're right, it's about assets and the cultural wealth from home.
Thank you. Director Strado.
Dr. Reggiani, good to see you. Thank you for your presentation. Of course, I have a bias because I have a EL daughter, and she gets services, and I can't thank the work you do in many different areas that it benefits so many families, including mine. Thank you for what you do. Chair, back to you.
Thank you. Director McVeigh.
Thank you. And it's award winner, Dr. Reggiani. Superstar. Two questions. I think you might have answered my first one, but I just want to confirm. So did school leaders get the data by building?
They do. They do receive it by building. And we also see it, let's say for middle schools, each middle school principal receives their school specific data, just theirs. And then they also receive the all district middle school so that they have a point of how am I doing amidst North Clackamas? And then we also can scale and see how are we doing compared to other Oregon schools or other like-sized schools around the country.
Thank you. And my second is, I don't remember the format of the survey. Is there an opportunity to have verbatims captured, or does it just ask for a score or?
In verbatims, do you mean like the words that the respondents tell us?
Yeah.
Yes, there is. There's a section called In Their Own Words where a person can type in anything that they would like to about their experience on that question. And that's where some of the richest data can come from. That's something that's kept confidential with our administrators for a variety of reasons. Oftentimes it's because there could be names in there. We want to use all sensitivity with that and caution and respect. But that's also a safety indicator for us. Do know too that even though this is an anonymous survey with our students, when there are safety flags that go up, there are different things that we can do to start investigating if there is an unsafe activity, an unsafe thing that is happening. So we also look at that data and scan that very deeply to make sure that we're paying attention to the student's experience.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bauer.
Yes, thank you for all the information and the breakdown in the gaps. I wanted to ask a question about the breakdown where you had the groups of students and how they saw was it how they saw other groups or how they saw themselves within that group?
It was their perception of how students at their school value others. So it was from their point of view, how they see other people valuing other students from diverse racial backgrounds, from diverse sexual orientations, and from diverse financial backgrounds. And so we broke that out across student population by race. And we could see that by race, there were different perceptions, but a growth in perception across all areas. So students' awareness of those who are similar and different than themselves, that's a great place to start when we're talking about democracy and civil discourse and respect for others and being in a shared space with those levels of respect. So it's eye-opening for us to see our students' perceptions, but also areas where we can improve.
So I also appreciate that you broke down the timeline. So you were comparing last year, almost pre-pandemic with pandemic, and there was relationships were really pretty positive, even though we were in the mostly online. But then you went through the different levels, and in high school that showed that there was some, only in high school, the student perception of belonging and peer collaboration declined. Now that we're back, I'm wondering if that will change. And are you still, you did say something about continuing to update this year, and you will look at that or not?
We will look at that when we survey. We're again targeting to do this survey probably in our traditional window of February. So you were right, it was pre-pandemic to pandemic time, and students had spent the last 12 plus months without their peers in face-to-face. So it definitely was seen there. But I want to go back to what you said about pre-pandemic and pandemic and relationships at school and school culture. One of the things that's so unique about North Clackamas's data, and the Youth Truth team tells us this pretty regularly, we did not follow the national trend of school relationships plummeting with school culture and with staff relationships over the pandemic. Now, across the nation, they saw a slight increase and then straight back to the norm once people were back in school. Now, Oregon experienced being out of school face-to-face a little bit longer than other places, and perhaps in other regions of the country who have different laws, rules, et cetera. But for North Clackamas, even given that distance of time, our students experienced in the emergency closures an increase in relationships with staff, and even a bump up during the full pandemic year. And that was against the national trend that we maintained a high level of relationships with our staff and students during distance learning. That to me speaks so deeply to North Clackamas values of relationships and being student-centered, and the lift that staff did this last year.
Thank you, Dr. Reggiani, for a great presentation.
Yes, thank you for that. Great information. I always like to hear what our kids think. I know that we often hear from adults, well, the parents or the families of our kids, but they're the ones walking the school halls every day, so they can tell us exactly what's going on. I always know. Anytime I hear a rumor, I turn to my kids and they're just like, yeah, no. It's not that way, Mom. I'm like, okay. Cool. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for that.
You're very welcome.
Next, we have summer programs report.
Good evening. So as a preface to tonight's presentation, I just want to say thank you, a huge thank you from our behalf on the amazing planning team who worked diligently to make our comprehensive summer enrichment program a reality. And they did that in a relatively short timeline. And to also our operational and instructional staff who, through their work and dedication, really created a rich experience for our learners. And with that, I'm just super excited for you to hear from Natalie Whistler, our Community Services Director, and Kristen Faust, our instructional coach, who will be sharing some feedback and highlights of our summer program.
Right. Thank you so much, Yvonne. As we head into this, I just want to reiterate that, Kristen and I get to present this work tonight, but we are just a very small part of a huge team that made summer programs happen. It took so many administrators and teachers and classified staff and operations department folks, bus drivers, nutrition services workers to make this happen. So we get to talk a little bit tonight about all the programs that we offered this past summer, and just know that we're only a small piece of the puzzle. Right. So we had a very unique opportunity this past summer, supported by grant funding offered through ODE. We were able to more than double our usual summer program offerings, which was a wonderful prospect. ODE issued some intention for these summer learning funds, and these intentions lined up really well with our district core values. Through these summer learning funds, we were able to support mental health, address unfinished learning, provide enrichment opportunities, and we did all of this by prioritizing in-person learning. There were some parameters around the funding. The K-8 identified funds were really designed to support academic enrichment, and the high school funds were really designed to support credit-bearing opportunities. So I want to go over the timeline for this project a little bit. So you'll see that on March 22nd, our state passed House Bill 5042, which identified funding for summer learning programs for districts across our state. Now, those of us that work with summer programs, by mid-end of March, we would like to have 90% of the details all wrapped up with a bow on it. And really, even as a parent, by mid-March, you're already looking for those summer opportunities for your students. So here we were around spring break time. We're still in distance learning, and we have this amazing and exciting and a little bit daunting news that historic funding was just passed for summer learning. So within a couple weeks, we got ready. We did a whirlwind round of gaining staff input, trying to get some community input, trying to speak to students, trying to figure out what we could do. And within just a couple weeks, on May 10th, we had a grant application ready to go. Looking back, honestly, I don't even fully remember how all of that happened, which is probably a sign of how this process went. So from May to June 25th, we worked to identify community partners to hire and train dozens, maybe hundreds of staff, coordinate across departments, get transportation ready with bus drivers hired so that we could have transportation for our students, develop brand new curriculum and plans, advertise and enroll students in these programs. And by June 28th, here we were outside of school buildings, ready to welcome our kids back. And as we go through our slides this evening, I would just also note that through the course of our summer programs, COVID guidelines changed multiple times at the state level. So we entered into summer programs still under Ready Schools Safe Learners, and then had an abrupt transition into our next set of guidance. And so for a period of time, student face coverings were strongly recommended, but not mandatory. And then by the end of summer programs, there was new guidance from our state, and we went back to universal face coverings indoors and out. So as you look at pictures of students, you'll see that represented. So access and equity was really important to us. And when you're in a rush, it's easy to miss those important details. And it was important to our team that we didn't let this one drop. ODE identified that we needed to prioritize students who qualify as emergent bilingual, migrant, our students that experience disability, our students experiencing houselessness, students experiencing poverty, and students who need to earn high school credits. In other words, many of our students who are most impacted by the pandemic. We worked with our schools to identify over 400 students that met those criteria and that schools felt would strongly benefit from access to in-person summer learning opportunities. And a team of us worked, split up that list and did direct phone calls to those families with translators as needed, reached out in person, let families know about our summer opportunities, tried to match them with one of the summer programs that we had to offer that would fit that family's needs. And then we supported them through the registration process and made sure that they had kind of an advanced registration opportunity so that our families that may otherwise face barriers in navigating our systems were able to have equal access to programs. We also advertised all of our programs in multiple languages. We reached out via school newsletters, used our counselors to help get the word out, advertised to all families in the district on Parent Square, and launched some new social media pages to be able to communicate directly with families. All in all, when you look at the demographic information that we've included, you'll see that we were able to well represent many of our student groups, that we were able to include the students that were most in need of these services, and that overall the demographics in this program matched our district demographics fairly well.
Thank you, Natalie. Now I get to talk about the fun stuff. These are the programs that we were able to create in that 8 weeks that I barely remember, and then enact so that students could have all kinds of awesome opportunities. So the first one, we're going to go from sort of most new programs to North Clackamas to some of the existing programs that we were able to expand this year. We were able to create a set of 2-week courses at Sabin-Schellenberg with the existing teachers there. The added piece of having high school courses be credit bearing made it a little bit more challenging than just enrichment, because there's certain things you need to do to earn credit. So, but we were able to get courses for 101 students in grades 10 through 12. When we talk about grade levels, we're talking about the grade level that they're in this year. So these are students who were 9th graders last year. The Sabin-Schellenberg courses weren't open to students who were 8th graders last year. They had to be 9th graders last year or above. And the way it worked out, all incoming juniors and seniors were able to enroll in 2 classes if they wanted them. And then all incoming sophomores who were interested in classes also were able to enroll in at least 1 class. So all of the interests that we had, we were able to meet the needs of those students through these credit opportunities. In addition to some of the Sabin-Schellenberg courses, which included a manual machining course where kids made a hammer, and a culinary course where they actually earned their food handler's card over the course of that 2 weeks. We also had a work study program that we did in partnership with our elementary programs that you'll hear more about. So we had students who did a few days of course of work with an instructor, and then went in and actually worked in our K-5 summer programs with students all summer long. So that was an exciting piece of it. They not only earned an internship credit for that, they also got paid for their work. So that was a great opportunity for our students. And then next, we had our enrichment camps. This was also a completely new program at 3 different sites. We had 2 elementary sites and 1 middle school site. There were 6 week-long sessions that students could enroll in. There were over 140 different camp sessions for students, K2, 3, 5, and 6, 8. So they were grouped by age, and then they had lots of different opportunities. One thing that made this really successful is we were able to partner with many organizations across the community and have them come in and teach courses. Just doubled the capacity from what we could have done with just NCSD staff. So that was definitely a partnership though. Every week we had some NCSD staff teaching courses and some partners teaching courses. And then we had NCSD site coordinators and IAs and admin assistants and all the other pieces in there, including mental health supports also at the enrichment camps for students. And then we also had our Title I summer school program. This was an expanded program this year. We expanded out to incoming first grade students, so students who were kindergartners last year and will be first graders this year. I think I said that right. Now I'm confusing myself. Anyway, 1 more grade level than we've done before for Title I summer school. We also had extended day options for Title I summer school, as well as 5-day-a-week options. So just really building on the successes that we've had in the past for our Title I summer school and giving more opportunities to some of our students who we knew really needed that support, especially after last year and the COVID year that we had. Part of the Title I summer school partner program was also the 21st Century Learning Boys and Girls Club, which is the next slide, Natalie. Thank you. So this was sort of a wraparound with Title I summer school. This was another expanded program. We had 244 students in grades K to 8. Again, this was a full day program. This was run in a partnership with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Portland. So they did a lot of the programming and we did the transportation and the meals and some of those pieces. And they were able to bring in lots of different outside partners to this summer to help give our students a wide range of experiences, not only classroom, sort of traditional math, science, English, but also rock climbing and roller skating and robotics and lots of other exciting opportunities. Another program that we were able to expand a lot this year was our Jumpstart program. In the past, that has been for our incoming kindergarten students in 6 elementary schools. And this year we had at least 1 Jumpstart class in every one of our elementary schools. Many of them had 2 Jumpstart classes. So that ran in August. It was a morning only program and really gave those kindergartners a chance to get to know what school looked like, what it felt like, and have some fun with their teachers and classmates before school started. An interesting fact about Jumpstart that sort of tells you about the need for programs like this overall is that there was twice as many students interested in Jumpstart as we actually had people to staff. So it was a success, and we expanded as much as we possibly could, and we could have done even more given more resources and time. Another program that we were able to expand this year was our CARE program. And this year we were able to offer that free of charge to all of our families. You can see almost 200 students, grades 1 to 6, that had a focus this year on health and wellness, daily mindfulness activities, physical activity, art and reading, again, included mental health support. And Natalie will talk about that in a little bit, but we did incorporate mental health supports in as many of the programs as we could this summer, knowing that that was a need we had, and we found lots of benefits from that, as you would expect. We also were able to expand our extended school year program. In previous years, that program has served about 60 to 70 students. But again, like all of our students, our students in our special ed programs were high needs this summer, and we were able to expand and serve about 100 students this summer. So that was an exciting expansion. And then finally, our high school credit recovery program, we expanded, and this year we're able to serve over 600 students. Many students, over half of them earned their credits in English and math, which we know are the highest need areas for our students. That was staffed by North Clackamas staff and employees. And another change this year in that is that 45% of the classes were taken for a letter grade. In the past, credit recovery courses have always been only pass-fail. So the addition of that option to take classes for a letter grade and the fact that students were actually choosing to get a letter grade instead of a pass or fail tells us a lot about how successful that program was and how much students appreciated the chance to actually be face-to-face, have a teacher they could ask questions, have classmates to interact with over the summer.
Thank you, Kristen. So as Kristen mentioned, we certainly couldn't do this all on our own. We were very thankful to have a multitude of community partners that were ready to join us on this wild ride. So one of our key partners this summer was North Clackamas Parks and Recreation. So they joined in on summer programs and were able to serve almost 1,800 North Clackamas students. They were able to offer programs in both Spanish and English for the first time. We were really happy to work with them and be a little bit creative together and work to try some new things that their agency hadn't done before. They were able to offer a broad variety of camps, including a lot of outdoor-based camps that we wouldn't have been able to do using only our own facilities and resources. They were also able to offer another all-day program option for families, which was much desired by many of our working parents. And they were able to offer aquatics programs, including swim lessons and safety presented in both Spanish and English. And those swim lessons served hundreds of our students this summer that got a chance to maybe do swim safety or swim lessons for the very first time. Kristen touched a little bit on our mental health supports. We partnered with Life Stance Health, formerly known as Western Psychological, and we were able to actually have 6 mental health clinicians embedded across many of our summer program sites. So they were there for the day-to-day at many of our sites. And they were able to focus mostly on prevention work. They did a lot of small social emotional skills groups with our kids, were able to build relationships with students and families, and were able to be there when our families and students presented with urgent needs on site, which did come up this summer. Our clinicians were able to assist with suicide prevention screenings, and very vital services for all of our kids as they were back into our buildings. We also worked with them to identify some funds that would be available to eliminate barriers for families. So we were able to refer any families to Life Stance that needed therapy or ongoing counseling services, and we were able to eliminate copays or deductibles so families could access that vital service. Here is a list of many of our partners. I would just go back to that grant timeline and think about us there in maybe end of May. And here we are reaching out to community partners, maybe anyone that will take our phone calls or emails, and trying to meet with these folks, share our vision for summer learning. Here's this ambitious plan that we have. I saw a few raised eyebrows on the, you're going to do what in the next 6 weeks? But this group of folks right here, this list, they joined in. They said, yeah, absolutely, we're there. We'll show up for kids and help provide services. And I am so thankful to all of our partners. Some of our partners included REAP. REAP is a youth leadership and empowerment nonprofit that works also out of Milwaukee High School, and they were able to provide entrepreneurship classes to our middle school students with a focus on our middle school students of color. And then some of our students that were transitioning from 8th grade into high school were able to connect with those same staff when they showed up at their high school, which was such a wonderful connection to have available. Venvino Art Studios was a local small business based out of Happy Valley, and we were able to partner with them, and they came and provided art classes and camps across multiple sites. So we have so much thankfulness for our partners, and we would love to continue to expand this list and make even more connections for our students. So we've mentioned timeline a few times, and you'll notice that is at the top of our list of challenges. That was a big one. And honestly, with a little more time than maybe 6 weeks, we could probably mitigate a lot of these other challenges on the list. Our challenges did also include ever-changing state guidance as we navigated that with our families and our staff. At program sites, our emphasis was on serving students, doing it safely, and keeping kids healthy and in buildings. We were glad to be able to do that. Staffing was definitely a limiting factor this summer. Overall, we were pleased with how many teachers and classified staff responded to the all call to come and work this summer. We had a lot greater response than maybe we could have even dreamed, but even still, staffing it did limit us in what we were able to do.
So we just want to share a little bit of feedback. We did gather feedback from most of our programs from students and parents and staff with, I think, I'll speak for myself and say with the hope that we can do something like this again next year and think of some ways to improve, maybe with a little more time, but you've heard about that already. So something that I think is significant as someone who's worked with middle school students is that we had so many middle school students wanting to come to camp every day, and then also willing to give us written feedback about it. So these are some of the student comments and some parent comments. I think it's important to notice that safety and that sense of community really comes up in the comments. That was something that was really valued by our students and our parents and also our staff. Our teachers who worked in the summer programs were so happy to be able to connect one-on-one with students again, to be in person, to do it in a safe way, in a setting where there weren't too many students. There was lots of opportunities to go outside. We didn't have a lot of rain this summer, which helped us a lot. We had a little bit of heat, which may have made things less than ideal here and there, but in the grand scheme of things, I think the weather was pretty cooperative. So, but really our staff, I had a teacher who said to me, this is exactly what I needed. This in-person connection with students reminded me of why I was a teacher. So thinking of all of the benefits this had for our students, just also it had tremendous benefits for staff too. Some of the suggestions that we heard, again, from some of those middle school students and elementary students, more time, they were having so much fun. Many of our students in the enrichment camps came back week after week to participate. A lot of the actionable feedback that we had from parents was related to the time constraints. By the time we were able to start enrolling kids, we only had a couple weeks before camp started, and that led to some confusion about, are we in, are we not in, those kinds of pieces. But we did our best to get through those. And then another piece of feedback that we heard about those enrichment camps, which were our newest program, there were some pieces of those that made it challenging for some parents and families to participate. The fact that we had a morning session and an afternoon session, and there was an hour in between. So if a parent had the capacity, they could sign their kid up for a morning session somewhere and an afternoon session somewhere, but then they had to drive them in between. So I think families would have appreciated if there was some option for that hour in between. And then we would have needed staffing and those kinds of pieces. But just thinking, if we can do this next year, how could we remove some of those barriers for our families who need programs like this the most?
So overall, this summer, we processed over 4,000 student registrations and served over 3,000 students. When the state issued the K-8 grant allocations, our funding allocation was based around serving 17.6% of our K-8 student body. All in told, we served more than 25% of our K-8 student body, which was a huge increase. We also served over 37,000 meals. Our nutrition services program ran community meal sites at many of our locations, and then program meal sites at almost all of our locations. We were also one of the few districts in the metro area, perhaps the only district in the metro area to offer transportation to summer programs. After summer programs, we had 156 high school students that were now on track to graduate. 70 new credits were earned in career and technical education classes. We worked with many community partners and 16 different bilingual swim classes and 12 bilingual camps were offered to the community. And we used 21 different NCSD sites. Thank you to our friends in custodial services and with the bond that very gratefully worked around all this activity. All in told, under K-8, we were able to spend about $1.3 million in grant funds with a $400,000 match from NCSD. And for our high school programs, we spent about $300,000. I didn't move enough, so my office lights went out on me. In high school programs, we were able to spend about $275,000 with $104,000 district match. So like we said, we were a small part of a large team. And when I think about this work, I am really proud of that team and all the folks that said yes to working very long hours this summer and making some things happen for our students. Right? Any questions for us?
Thank you for that presentation. I really appreciate all the information that you guys provided for us. If you can stop sharing so I can see the screen, that would be, thank you. Appreciate that. Board members, we are over time. And so I'm going to ask that you be short, sweet, and brief, and only raise your hand if you have something to ask. Does anyone have something to ask? Director McVeigh.
And I'll be quick. Two questions. One, did the outreach to those targeted kids, were we successful?
Yeah, so I would have to look to find the exact percentage of those students that eventually registered, but we would have that data. All in all, I would say that was successful. I mean, we were doing direct outreach to some of our most vulnerable students and families, and we were able to get many of them to participate. And I do strongly believe that without that direct personal contact, that many of those families wouldn't have been able to navigate systems and get their students into those programs.
And does Happy Valley moving away from North Clackamas Park and Rec, will that affect our summer programs in the future?
Yeah. So with this partnership with North Clackamas Parks and Recreation, this was a separate contract with Parks and Rec designed around serving NCSD students. So for this purpose of this grant and this contract, they served all of our Happy Valley students at our request. And that was the criteria. So being in district or out of district for the Parks and Recreation Department didn't matter. If we were to work with them again in a similar way in the future, we would have the option of setting up a similar contract with them.
And then Chair Ford, this is for you. I think I would be interested at some point it doesn't have to be a board presentation, but more information on REAP. You know, we hit the lottery jackpot with Chadre running that program at Milwaukee High School. If we could clone him and put him in all of our in all of our schools, that would be awesome. But I'd like to know more about the program itself, and but it could just be something that's sent out at someone's leisure, just so I could read up on it. That'd be great. Thank you. Great presentation, always.
Director Perez.
Yes, thank you, Board Chair. Quick question. Thank you, Natalie, Kristen, for the presentation. Quick question for the I think it was called prevention-focused programming. When you say prevention, my brain goes to a lot of different things with regards to prevention. What specifically, was the prevention focused on there?
Yeah, so the prevention-based programming was all around supporting students' mental health in an upstream sort of way. So that included social emotional learning, skills-based groups, working with large and small groups of students on skills, emotional regulation. It also included mentoring, individual check-ins with students that were maybe starting to have a hard time as they integrated back into more structured programs. And so having someone there that was able to really focus on that skill building is supportive of preventing, crisis.
Was there as far as I'm trying to think of how to ask the question. Was there feedback as to, how effective, or, were we able to actually help students there with that?
Yeah, I probably got more feedback on the mental health supports from staff than any other component. That was the number one request of our staff, was to always have that available and embedded for our students in summer learning. And then I was able to speak with a few families individually that had really specific situations where having that mental health support right there and available during, what was perhaps some of the hardest moments that they'd had to navigate as a family was just deeply impactful.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you. Director Bauer, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I just wondered, there is some funds left, I'm assuming, for next summer. So I'm hoping there will be some programs that, or do we need to ask for that, work for that?
The funds that we were given had to be spent this summer. So they had to be spent by September 30th. And we are optimistic, perhaps, that there will be funds again next year. Lots of districts didn't spend any of the money that was available, and we were able to spend about half of it. And that was with some pretty aggressive planning. I think Natalie can speak a little more. She's heard some more things about that. But as far as the money from last year, we were not able to carry any of that over from the grant.
So this was all state funds and matching with the district. It wasn't the federal funds.
Yeah, this was state funding.
Okay, thanks. I hope parents were listening. I hope they stayed with us to listen to this. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you guys, appreciate it. Next, and also our last agenda item, is North Clackamas Education Foundation. I gotta admit, I'm exhausted. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but this is tough, just saying.
Well, please hang in, Chair Ford, because we have an awesome presentation tonight from North Clackamas Education Foundation, leader Stephanie Rose, as well as Rory Dunback, who is with us tonight as well. At this point, I would like to turn it over to both of them to share about the amazing partnership that we have with the Education Foundation and the accomplishments of this year, as well as some highlights that we're going to see to come. I'll turn it over to you, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you all for inviting us tonight and having us be here. And I've got to say, I'm always impressed by all of the work that you all do and that our district does together to support our kids. And as part of the foundation, I'm just so thankful to be able to be a part of that and help support all of this great work and our teachers and students. So I'm going to go to our slideshow. And this is what we're looking at for what we've accomplished in the 2020-21 school year. We're looking at, this is a brief overview of what we put out to the district, and we'll go through some of this as we work through the slides. I think one of the things that is noted that may be a bit different is the amount of money that went to the Family Support Center, emergency housing, and middle school engagement and after school programs. So some of that money, about $50,000 of that money historically has gone to various high schools and elementary schools and has impacted every school in the district by helping pay for program fees, school supplies, things like that. Of course, the 2020-21 school year looked a lot different without our schools and without our students in class. So upon the district's request, they asked us to move that money to the Family Support Center and the emergency housing program and middle school engagement for after school programs for our middle school students. And that allowed the Family Support Center to serve more students with their food pantry and allowed them to pick up some extra support staff and allowed some of our after school programs to just kind of finalize and finish off some of their robust online programs for their students. So this is what, an overview of our year looked like. We'll go into, so this was our grants. We awarded $44,000 in grants. Now these went directly to schools, directly to educators, directly to classrooms, and directly to impacting students. We saw a lot of teachers that really focused on our current cultural topics, the distance learning, as well as diversity and social justice topics. You'll see up in the corner here is a couple of teachers who picked up books from diverse authors, and they were books that were specifically made to be read in group settings online. And I wish I had a better view of the print of these books because the pictures are big, the words are big, and they bought them for their elementary school kids so they could have group reading online and they could hold those books open and flip the pages and their kids could learn from diverse authors while they were doing their group reading. We also had a variety of grants that went to whiteboards. Whiteboards was a popular one for teachers that were doing math for their young students. So their students could write their math problems out on the whiteboards and then hold them up to their cameras. And the teachers could see clearly what work the students were doing, and they didn't have to rely on those students to be able to work with the technology as much as the older kids were able to. And we also had a district-wide grant that we did for our middle school students. It went to 8 different teachers in middle schools throughout the entire district. And that was for BIPOC authors. And the educators' reasoning for wanting those grants was that they didn't have enough books in their classrooms for their students that had authors that looked like them, that represented them. And so we were really happy to award that grant and get those books, several hundred books, pushed out to every middle school in the district. We also had books going home to students was a big one. A lot of teachers were really worried that their students didn't have access to books in their homes. They weren't having access to the school library. They weren't having access to classroom libraries. And even though our county libraries were open, if if families didn't have transportation, they might not be able to utilize those as much. So we had a lot of teachers ask us if we could give them small grants for these book sets that they could send home with their students to be sure their students were able to read and engage in their homes. We sent out last year we had an historic amount with $84,000 in scholarships. And this year we did $89,200 in scholarships. A lot of this came about because we knew that families were really having financial uncertainty. A lot of students didn't know what college was going to look like for them. They didn't know what they were going to be able to afford in college with maybe their parents laid off or even students themselves laid off from work. So this number was able to happen by going to our partners, Leo Brown, the Chartwells, Sandy DePape, Harold Taylor, going to them and saying, hey, look, our class of 2021, we stepped up to help our class of 2020. Now we got to step up and really help our class of 2021. And so where historically these scholarships had only given out maybe one scholarship to these students, funding was increased to these areas so we could give scholarships to 2 students in these areas. And so that helped. We sent out 32 scholarships to 28 students. So some of those students did maybe get a Bridges to Success scholarship, as well as a Chartwell scholarship, or the Future Educator scholarship, as well as a Bridges scholarship. It depends on what their scoring was and their applications were in those. We did have 2 new scholarships in the district for the year, and I evidently didn't change the date on that. That's great. That should be new in 2020-21. But it's the Alex Hudson Memorial Scholarship, which was a scholarship started by a special education teacher in the district who has since retired. And her brother was a special education student in the district. And he, in his adult years, had recently passed away, but the family wanted to find a way to honor him. So they started a scholarship with us that goes to students who want to go on to college for careers in service. So they're looking specifically at counselors, special education teachers, nurses, things like that, that they want to help those students see their career goals. The other one is the Future Educator Scholarship. And I helped facilitate the creation of that scholarship with 3 educators from NCSD, Shantae Hines, Michelle Doyle, and Kimberly Amador. And the North Clackamas Education Association funds that scholarship. The purpose of that scholarship is to increase culturally and linguistically diverse teachers in North Clackamas. So their goal of this is to help students that want to go into the teaching field, go and get their teaching degree and come back to North Clackamas to be a teacher. And you actually see up here in the Chapman University sweatshirt, that is our Future Educators recipient for this year, first ever, Sasha Nielsen. And just want to draw your attention to this quote down here from one of our scholarship recipients, Michelle Bang. She won the Sandy DePape Memorial Scholarship. And she says that this scholarship has taken a burden off of my family's shoulders, and I'm so excited to start school with less stress about the cost. Although it is still very early in my higher education career, the money saved through this scholarships during my undergraduate years truly helps our family in the long run. Hopefully in the future, I will be able to return to reach out to everyone again as Dr. Michelle Bang. And you can see this is Michelle up here in the corner, kind of tucked behind her quote. So we're just really proud to be able to do that for all of our students and help them. This is our check-in. Our 4-year on a 5-year contract that we have had with the district. We have awarded $800,000 to the schools in the last 4 years, and that an additional $225,000 has funneled through us to the Family Support Center, Backpack Buddies, and Lunch Buddies programs. That puts us at 80% of our contract being met, and I've just got to say that after coming out of a very hard year, I'm just impressed with the way that our community came together, our board came together, our staff came together, and in perhaps one of the hardest years we've ever had, we were able to increase this funding by so much to our schools and really put support where it was needed. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about the year was it made it a bit more difficult, but what we did was we opened up the enrichment grants to our educators year round. We usually only have a set application time, but we knew that these educators would be in the classroom not knowing preemptively what they needed, or not knowing from one day to the next what they were going to need or what their curriculum was going to look like. And so we left it open all year. And so throughout the year, weekly, we had grants coming in from educators saying, hey, I need this for my classroom. Hey, I'm doing this now, and I think I need this, or this cost of this changed and I don't quite have enough to get this. Can you help me cover it? And so keeping up with the demand of their requests, as well as the Family Support Center needs and the scholarship requests, it was, like I said, quite a challenge, but I'm so proud of the way our community and staff stepped up to meet that challenge and exceed expectations as far as I'm concerned. What we're looking at so far for the 2021-22 school year, we have already awarded over $10,000 in enrichment grants. We're $25,000 for Ready, Set, Go. We're taking direction from the school district on the funding priorities. We're continuing to build strong relationships with the Family Support Center. Last year, we started doing some fundraisers with them. One of the big areas for fundraising needs was the Emergency Housing Fund, and we were able to secure some grants for them, as well as run some community-wide fundraisers. We're looking at our total projected funding for 21-22 to be $220,000 in support. And that does not include the money that funnels through us as fiscal agents for the Family Support Center, Backpack Buddies, and Lunch Buddies programs. We have our 30th anniversary gala coming up on May 7th, 2022. We are, fingers crossed and knock on wood, hoping for that to be at least a hybrid event at Camp Withicum again this spring. And then another quick announcement is we are also hiring our third position of a communications coordinator. We had one for about half the year last year, and she was absolutely amazing, but unfortunately left us for a full-time position. I can't blame her. So we're looking for somebody to fill that gap part-time. I think with that, I will stop sharing on my screen and let Rory wrap this up before we answer questions from you guys.
Okay, great, Stephanie. Thank you so much. Appreciate the introduction. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Rory Dunnebeck. It's my first meeting, so it's great to be here today, and appreciate your partnership and your support. Been the chair for pretty much the entire pandemic. That's been my experience. I've been on the board though for a few extra years, so I've seen all the great work, and I am truly blessed with the history of this organization. It's been going on for several years, 20 some odd years from the history. But really, we're looking forward, right? And why I'm here tonight is to talk to you just for a few minutes about what we're thinking. And our partnership is so vital, and we have done such a great job of giving you a decent amount of money over the last couple of years, and we're certain it's nowhere near enough. We're very clear on that. We want to do more. We have a wonderful staff, we have a great volunteer board, and we have a lot of passion and enthusiasm. And the challenges are just like everyone else's. We're short on resources, and we're working hard to figure out how to get more people involved in our wonderful organization. But we spent some time over the last year and a half really thinking strategically. We've hired a consultant to come and help us even think it out, which I think has been a good exercise. And to really look at, how can we take $200,000 a year and make it $400,000? And it's really not that difficult to do. That's the good news. The bad news is it just takes time. So we're looking forward to our partnership as we go through the next years and looking hard at the contract and seeing, how can we be your partner going forward? So I just want to thank all the people who are our board. They give us countless timeless hours of their free time to really look at how we can be your partner. So I'm thankful to have such a great organization to work with, and thank you for having me today. I just wanted to leave you with those few things as we continue our conversations through the next year about how we can make this great or even better. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for that wonderful information about especially the money for our kids. Appreciate that. Anyone have any questions?
Quick question, Chair. Just to clarify for everybody listening, when there's teacher enrichment grants for our elementary school, middle school, high school, and I'm wondering what, and you may have mentioned it, and I apologize, I've missed it. Is there a deadline for those teacher enrichment grants?
So we had our first round of grant funding and applications went over the summer, and that was for fall program funding. So we will open up our next round of grants in December to award grants for winter and spring program funding. So
Okay.
they'll be, I think the due date is usually set sometime right after the first of the year. They have most of November and December to do the application.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. And Rory, good to see you after completing a Portland Marathon a couple of days ago. Good to see you there.
Any other questions? Excellent. Well, thank you all for your presentations and the information of the evening. I think if you have any additional questions, board, I think it is appropriate to send it to our superintendent if something comes up. And then we can follow up from there. And I know, Tori, you asked for a follow-up specifically that I will make sure that we get to all board members. But other than that, it is 9:24. This was a long meeting. I'm not sure if we need to do a bunch of presentations in one night ever again. Just saying, I love you all, but that was tough. I felt like I was back at school. Anyway, good information. Appreciate you guys. For all you parents that hung in there with us, we appreciate you too. 9:24, meeting is adjourned. Have a good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.